I'm not sure how I got here. Has something to do with Batman, I think. I'm still figuring this place out, but I think a bunch of guys like us should team up and could do some good.
So, what are we? Some kind of suicide squad?
This is Crystal! She's got my back! I'm advised not being killed by her. Her fluff traps the souls of its victims. Crystal?
I know some of you probably won't believe this, but I am a much bigger fan of DC Comics than I am of Marvel. I grew up on DC, particularly the Bruce Timm and Paul Dini-helmed universe of Batman the Animated Series through Justice League. These were the heroes that shaped my childhood. I like the general existence of DC's universe more than Marvel. Fewer asshole civilians and better explanations for all the heroes' super tech than, our guys are just really smart, shut up. I find the conflicts of DC's godlike characters grand, compelling, and thematically rich when done correctly. And DC's long history of animated films covers a great variety of stories and heroes in a medium that lets them take huge swings with amazing payoffs. Which is why it's so painful that DC just can't get their shit together! Their movies keep collapsing under terrible vision or no vision. The live-action TV shows were dogged by abusive actors. They keep canceling way more content than actually gets made. The best the animated Tomorrowverse can hope for is to die with dignity. And if I see the Flash run back in time to fix one more botched universe, I'm going to puke! And their games division seems to have no freaking clue what fans actually want. Let's make an Injustice sequel that completely misses the appeal of Injustice. Focus on the crap hole universe and how it's going to stay a crap hole forever. Let's make a Batman game that focuses on his sidekicks, but botch the Arkham combat and build it around grinding garbage loot. And you know that beloved studio that made 2.5 brilliant Batman games that remain wildly popular and successful to this day? Let's force them to make a greed-fueled live service that actively tries to ruin those beloved games. So yeah, DC's latest royal screw-up that nobody asked for, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. It's an open-world, looter-shooter, live service, always online co-op. So many industry buzzwords I may vomit. Kill the Justice League hasn't exactly been burdened with glorious hype. From the first gameplay reveal, it looked like a cynical rehash of Anthem. It's yet another case of a single-player dev being forced at gunpoint to make a multiplayer title. The studio's founders fled Rocksteady mid-development. Fans are sick of evil Superman, who was the face of the game's marketing for a while. The game was delayed 9 months at the last second under a flimsy excuse. And of course, we were told this was legendary Batman actor Kevin Conroy's final performance before he tragically passed away 2 years ago. In a plot that has you literally murder the man's legacy. Nobody has been looking forward to this train wreck. But did it turn out as terribly as the anti-hype equation suggested? Well, Miles, Schnick, and myself played the entire thing in co-op, and frankly, none of us were impressed. By the way, our initials are K, M, and N, so our squad name is Task Force Kill Me Now. It was very appropriate. The game's story is unforgivably weak. The supervillain Brainiac invades Metropolis and starts transforming its citizens into an army of brainwashed soldiers, with it eventually revealed that he's preparing a doomsday weapon that will terraform the Earth into his new home. And if that sounds kinda exactly like the plot of David Ayer's Suicide Squad movie from 2016, it's because the odds are pretty high that this game started as a movie tie-in. Brainiac brainwashes the Justice League, Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, and the Flash, leaving only Wonder Woman remaining. So government boogie woman Amanda Waller does the next logical thing: drop 3 ordinary humans and the spawn of a shark god into the city, and hope they hold their own against physical gods and intergalactic super weapons. Yes, Waller assembles the Suicide Squad, consisting of Master Assassin Deadshot, Drunken Thief Captain Boomerang, Unexplained Demigod King Shark, and living suit of plot armor powered by real-world popularity, Harley Quinn, who are all deployed to Metropolis to thwart Brainiac's invasion. I can't remember the last time a game gave so little of a shit about getting you invested into its plot or setting. The game picks up with Brainiac's invasion already weeks underway, We never see the invasion or the Justice League's corruption. We never see the Justice League doing anything pre-corruption. We're thrown in not knowing a single thing about the squad members, to the point I'm not even sure this King Shark is an actual villain. You are a complete stranger dropped into this alien setting with no context for anything that's happening, fighting a phantom villain that isn't introduced until the end of the game. The few actual scraps of story are relayed via audio logs that unlock silently in the background. You're just an outsider with a permanent disconnect to everything in the game.
By the way, according to the audio logs, Brainiac took over Metropolis because Superman convinced the Justice League, "Oh, come on, I'm an alien and nobody supported me when I came to Earth, and I turned out fine. Let's just roll out the red carpet for Brainiac. I'm sure he's a swell guy."
Next time I let Superman take charge, just hit me real hard.
Rocksteady is very adamant that this is set in the same world as their beloved Arkham games, as in, they literally force you through a museum, recapping the main trilogy at the start of the game. And the Arkham connection raises more than a few questions. Why is Deadshot a black man now when he was white in the other games? They talk like this is the first Suicide Squad to form, but they were recruiting way back in Arkham Origins and already had a mission in Assault on Arkham. This entire crew has worked together before, but now they act like they're strangers? And hold on, King Shark died in that movie, so what's he doing here? You pretty much have to assume that nothing is canon in the Arkham games except for the actual games. And I mean the core games, because Origins and Blackgate apparently don't count anymore. Past that, the writers for everything don't pay attention to anything, to where Arkham lore is more convoluted than Five Nights at Freddy's. Kill the Justice League is a third-person shooter. Missions will have you needing to kill a set number of enemies, destroy objectives guarded by enemies, keep enemies away from 1 to 3 objectives for a set time, or wade through enemies to rescue civilians. You do have a melee attack, but there aren't any melee combos, and your melee weapon doesn't really do much. It more so just knocks an enemy into the air so you can immediately lock on and get a few shots with your gun. Melee strikes also break the invincibility armor that some enemies have, and holding the melee button inflicts a status ailment on the immediate area if you had one charged. The main use for your melee weapon is that if you shoot an enemy in the legs, they can become vulnerable for a shield harvest, where the melee weapon deals heavy damage and you recover health, which is pretty much the only reliable way to heal in the entire game. And there's supposed to be a counter system where you time freezing bullets to enemy attacks, but none of us ever figured out how the hell it works, and it barely seems to work at that. By now you're probably saying to yourself, okay, but you were playing as Captain Boomerang. How do the other characters play? No, that's it, bro. All 4 characters do the exact same thing in combat. They all focus on guns, they all have melee attacks that don't do anything, they all have the same super moves, and they all have the same stun shots. Even maxed out, I could barely tell the difference between Deadshot and Boomerang. Even King Shark, who should be a melee-focused tank, does practically all of his fighting with guns, and he doesn't even have more health than the other characters. There are no classes. They made 4 functionally identical characters, so it doesn't matter which one you use. Even Anthem got that shit right.
He does exactly what I do.
Literally, the only significant difference between characters is what weapons they can use. Boomerang gets shotguns and sniper rifles, King Shark gets assault rifles and Gatling guns, Harley gets submachine guns and pistols, and Deadshot gets both kinds of rifles. That's it. And frankly, my Boomerang spent the entire game with a full-auto shotgun, and the sniper rifles all fire about 50 rounds a second. I didn't exactly miss not being able to use assault rifles. Who cares? Each character also has a unique traversal mechanic for zipping around the overworld and combat arenas. King Shark has a super jump, Boomerang can teleport, Harley has a grapple gun, and Deadshot has a jetpack. But they're all so slow and clunky, control like crap, such limited range, and have to land to cooldown after every single use. They all do the same damn thing. Deadshot can hover in combat. That's it. That's the one and only idea they had for varying playstyles. Crap in a hat. In Rocksteady's defense, it's not like there are any Suicide Squad members with cool powers that'd be fun to build unique playstyles around, like Black Manta, Killer Frost, Mirror Master, Major Force, Count Vertigo, Enchantress, El Diablo, Cheetah, Bane, Plastique, Dr. Light, Polka Dot Man, or really anybody besides the 4 generic placeholders that they went with. I understand why Rocksteady had all the characters use guns. They want you to grind all the characters, and they didn't want you getting stuck with someone that has no equipment or has a gameplay style that you hate. But that's the problem. The game very much expects you to grind every single character from scratch, and nobody's going to want to grind 4 identical people. I barely tolerate that shit with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, let alone 4 blank gun holsters with all personality and powers stripped out. It all contributes to the game's biggest overall problem. Repetition, repetition, repetition. Kill the Justice League's core gameplay is fun. It's a somewhat quick-paced shooter that emphasizes mobility and proactive play. The controls are cluttered, but smooth and responsive, and the weapons are satisfying to use. The full-auto shotguns and rapid-fire sniper rifles kick ass, and King Shark's Gatling guns mulch the enemies for long stretches with a quick reload. That's cool. The problem is every damn fight in the game feels pretty much exactly the same. You play the game for a few hours and it does not evolve past that. You've seen everything. There are about 4 enemy types in the entire game. Grunts that you massacre with ease, snipers that you need a long-range weapon to deal with, helicopters that hose you down with fire but die pretty easily, and brutes which have mile-long health bars. That's it! Those 4 enemies are all you fight in every damn mission of the game! There's no tactics to combat like in the Arkham games where you prioritize targets, save your special attacks, and have to think on the fly what gadgets to use, or Doom 2016 where you have to remember which enemies do what and strategize accordingly. It's a mindless shooter where you just pump lead into everything you see until the mission ends. There is no variety to the gameplay. You do the same one fight for untold hours on end. Even when the game tries to add in new mechanics, it backfires every time. Some enemies have flash powers. Okay, they dodge every now and then. Doesn't change your basic strategy. Some helicopters get Green Lantern armor. Okay, they can take 2 additional hits, and it looks like that's literally it. Some enemies get Batman invisibility powers. Okay, you can still see them perfectly fine. That shit does nothing. How does a game that was in development for over a decade have so few ideas? Oh, sorry, there are a few levels that do shake up the gameplay. Some side missions where enemies are only vulnerable to shield harvests, counters, or critical hits, which only serves to make the game infuriating. My favorite was the level where enemies are only weak to grenades because the game stopped spawning grenades and was glitched unwinnable! And of course, your reward for doing missions is loot in the form of equipment drops, but the game's loot system is iffy. Equipment does not have a level attached to it, which you'd think would be good since you're never forced to replace stuff, but it also means that the vast majority of the loot drops are crap. I got a legendary shotgun in literally the 2nd story mission. Maybe I replaced Boomerang's sniper rifle 3 times, and all the other weapons that I got went straight in the trash. Roughly 90% of the gear that I picked up was consistently worse than my current equipment. And it's not like you can even do anything with lousy gear except scrap it for crafting resources, which the game already showers on you like it's Halloween candy. My main motivation for grinding was leveling up my characters, but they even screwed that up! Leveling up a character does not give a boost of any kind to any of their stats. Instead, it lets you unlock the next rigidly predetermined slot on your skill tree, which all have such convoluted ass effects you'd think they read modern Yu-Gi-Oh cards and said, "Hold my beer!" At 30 times combo and higher, damage reduction is increased by 5% for each second of sustained firearm fire up to a maximum of 50%. This effect cancels after 1 second without firing. At 30 times combo and higher, if the combo breaker triggers while airborne, your combo won't break and instead you generate 10 combo. This can only happen once every 30 seconds. What is a combo breaker? At 20 combo and higher, being airborne for 5 seconds increases the damage of your next grenade by 50% and causes it to generate 5 additional combo. At 30 times combo and higher, critical hit damage is increased by 50% on enemies further than 10 meters, and shield harvest chance is increased by 25% on enemies within 10 meters. Yeah, any of that shit actually, make me stronger! So leveling up does basically nothing, you're rewarded with gear that does basically nothing, the game has taken pains to keep me disengaged from the story and the universe, and yet they want you to keep replaying the same 4 goddamn levels, fighting the same 4 goddamn enemies, just because the game feels entitled to all of your time. And if I sound pissed, it's because I am sick to death of this same gameplay loop that already failed in Avengers and Anthem! Kill the Justice League is a live service game that's meant to have infinite content so that you keep playing the game infinitely, but you know what live service games are actually beloved and successful? Fortnite, Fall Guys, Among Us, Apex Legends, Overwatch, and Team Fortress 2 before their publishers killed them! Games where players fight each other competitively! So there's an actual reason to keep playing the same thing for hours on end. You can't just plonk 4 generic characters into 4 generic copy-paste missions shooting the same 4 generic copy-paste enemies with bland copy-paste weapons, take out the ending, and expect that to sustain players for months! I just want to know what brain-dead dipstick decided this was the formula for success when that has literally never been the case! These games are chasing a bandwagon that doesn't exist! Okay. What other things in the game did I like? I like the memorial plaques to Kevin Conroy and Harley Quinn actress Arlene Sorkin in the Hall of Justice. I like the pride flags over the hall's entrance. I like how the pride flags prompt endless enraged rants from people who get off on calling everybody else snowflakes. The black mask guns are kind of cool. You shoot 3 enemies to mark them and then they explode. That's creative. And also the only cool villain mechanic in the game, since the rest are convoluted self-sabotaging bullshit like this. One other thing that I actually really like. The vehicles. Sometimes hovercraft spawn in that let you rain hellfire down on enemies with extremely powerful weapons, and it's actually fun as hell. Especially the missions where tons of vehicles spawn in, and the enemies are only vulnerable to vehicle weapons. It's like the one time where the gameplay actually comes to life. So what's the catch? Vehicles almost never spawn. And there are only 3 or 4 vehicle-focused levels that you play once each the entire game. The one actual fun system is barely ever used. Honestly, the best thing about Suicide Squad is it's making me appreciate the failed live service games that came before. Anthem and Avengers both had character classes that were actually distinct from one another. Avengers upgrade trees made you feel tangibly stronger and made coherent sense. Both games' missions had more meat on their bones to make the games feel substantive, while Suicide Squad missions tend to boil down to one obnoxiously overlong fight, and neither game dicked you around with an almost completely pointless open world. Suicide Squad gives you a massive Metropolis map that feels completely empty and obnoxiously slow and padded to navigate. Enemies and Lois Lane will jabber endlessly on the radio with repeated conversations and won't shut the hell up! Stray enemies are wandering the overworld, but you barely get any XP for fighting them. The city map just feels like filler! And that's before we get to how small, homogeneous, and dull Metropolis feels compared to Gotham from their last 2 games. About the most I can say for Metropolis's design is that it's plastered head to toe in ads for the Justice League. I know it was meant to emphasize how beloved and public heroes they are, but honestly, it just gives me vibes that this whole game's premise was engineered to rip off The Boys. Think about it. The Boys is about a group of ordinary humans with sketchy government black ops backing trying to take down a superhero team. Said super team never actually does any superheroing and is more concerned with branding and advertising and sponsorships, which is kind of exactly how the League is presented here. The super team in The Boys murders tons of civilians, kind of exactly how Batman does when you first meet him, The Wonder Woman stand-in is the only member of both teams that's actually good. Our unpowered protagonists have exactly one meta on their team, and their entire deal is super strength and ripping people to shreds. The unpowered leads sometimes get a leg up by recruiting other metas or plundering heroes' equipment, and just like the boys, the bulk of the focus is on killing the team's speedster first. It's like DC was mad that the spoof of DC is more popular than DC. Maybe that's tinfoil hat conspiracy, but it's not the only instance of the game blatantly chasing trends. You know how Poison Ivy died in Batman Arkham Knight? Yeah, she's back now, because Ivy growing back from a plant was a thing in one of the worst DC books ever made. And after they bring back Ivy, Harley has truckloads of dialogue about how she's gay for Ivy, and the two totally have this deep romantic past. Even though Arkham's Harley and Ivy had all of one interaction where they act like they barely know each other, and they never talked about each other ever again. And why is this a thing that happens? Because the Harley Quinn animated series is popular, and in it Harley and Ivy have a lesbian relationship that fans go nuts for. So let's blunt force retcon this gay relationship with a child into a game where it has zero business being a thing. Oh god, I just realized. Harley being gay for a child is exactly the groomer fear-mongering bullshit that's hurled at LGBT people on a daily basis. What the hell, Rocksteady? Hack's new design looks like she stepped straight out of the Spider-Verse movies. And guys, is Black Deadshot a thing in the comics, or was this to copy Will Smith's portrayal from the 2016 movie? And this could just be a me thing, but the squad feels more like they're written like the Guardians of the Galaxy. They make reference to having been criminals, but don't actually do criminal things anymore. They start out self-serving, but take to the heroic mission with gusto, and as the game goes on, they pontificate about how they're all the family and camaraderie that they never had, and they feel good belonging to something. The hints are all written in radical lingo like Star-Lord was doing the talking, and King Shark is written almost exactly like Drax from the Square Enix game, the smart and reflective one who just doesn't get human idioms. Again, King Shark is the smart one.
The experience would not be the same, Floyd Lawton. I would never ask you to simply look upon renderings of Atlantis.
And?
Yes.
The game's universe feels like a hodgepodge of other things that were successful during development. Like at every step of the way, corporate producers were the ones calling the shots. The trend chasing did comically backfire in one area though, because the game's Flash is written and designed specifically like Ezra Miller's portrayal in the DCEU. Which probably sounded like a good idea before Miller turned out to be a rampaging psychopath. Or hell, maybe they just counted on you wanting to kill Miller's Flash.
Really? Why don't you just mail me the bullet?
We ran into some baffling glitches, too. One of our sessions, the game just forgot to log campaign progress for Schnick, so he had to redo levels. Miles got stuck in a wall using Harley's grapple. At one point I died, but my body was falsely appearing somewhere else to the other players, so I couldn't be revived and we failed the level. I had a gun bug out to where it would immediately read as having 0 bullets left, reload, and repeat that cycle until it completely ran itself dry. Graphical glitches abound, like my muzzle flashes being detached from my gun because the wrong model spawned in. I got hung up on invisible obstacles that kept shocking Menards. Oh, and we had one full-on crash and one server disconnect, which sounds lower than average from what I can tell. But hands down, the worst bug we ran into was... Well, channel devotees have already seen it, but Christ, what we found at the end of the game defies words. You spend the entire first half of the story aimlessly running around Metropolis recruiting people to the Resistance. You try to recruit Flash, but that fails, then you recruit Penguin to make guns, then you recruit Gizmo to make those vehicles that never appear. You meet Rick Flag and Hack, and they give you loads of time-filler missions for vague recon or intel that never pays off. Then Ivy just kind of happens, and you recruit her too. The first thing Ivy does when you save her is try to kill you for not being a plant. She's constantly trying to kill civilians or friendly soldiers. She's skin-peelingly annoying every time you're forced to interact with her. But you're supposed to think she's cute because she's a child. If the squad is written like the Guardians, is Ivy supposed to mimic Baby Groot? You try to recruit Lex Luthor, but then he dies too, but then Toyman just kind of shows up out of nowhere to recruit him too. Each of the characters in your so-called support squad gives you side missions, 23 in grand total, and each is basically one fight. Hack unlocks slots for daily missions that give you crafting supplies, which I was constantly swimming in anyway. Flag's missions unlock Amortech weapons, I think. Except Amortech weapons suck because they don't work on grunts, which are like 80% of what you fight. Ivy's missions unlock alternate status ailments that you don't need once you get the completely busted Venom Frenzy that makes enemies attack each other. Penguin's missions unlock weapon crafting options, which you will never use unless you switch characters and are desperate for starting equipment. Penguin also lets you augment weapons, which was such a confusing process that none of us could figure out what the hell it does. I think it randomizes your weapon's stats without actually telling you what changed, and it feels completely useless. And Gizmo's missions buff those vehicles that never spawn, like the game's going out of its way to be completely pointless. The only support characters that are worth a shit are Toyman, who lets you pick what mods to apply to your weapons, and Lex, who substantially upgrades equipment the more you use it. Using these two features is pretty much the only tangible way that your characters ever get any stronger. Like meaningful progression has been blocked off until an arbitrary story completion. It was seriously 10 freaking hours in our playthrough before anything actually happened. Toyman just pulls a magic speed force negating disc right out of his ass. And this allows the squad to fight the Flash. And the Flash fight sucks nards. You have to land counters on him to make him vulnerable, and then he runs all over the map completely unmarked to where you pretty much have to get lucky to notice that he's standing still if you want to deal any damage. But the worst part, at least to me, is that Flash starts whipping up massive tornadoes that you can barely avoid, and there's not a good way to recover your pitifully tiny health bar. They cover half the arena in cheap damage, and then you get screwed by a slight touch. And I thought this fight sucked before I replayed it solo while farming King Shark, where I had to do everything myself and died when I was an inch away from winning and had to start over. There is no point to farming characters until the end game, by the way. The story missions give you jack for XP, and there's barely any side content. Eventually, you kill the freaking Flash, and Green Lantern just immediately shows up. They put so little weight or importance on the Flash dying that Miles was legitimately confused whether he was actually dead. For absolutely no reason, Brainiac fires a beam that the squad jumps into, and they all warp to Earth 2, a parallel universe where Brainiac has already invaded and conquered the planet. Yes, out of nowhere, this just became a multiverse story. I told you this was built entirely around chasing trends. The multiverse is supposedly why Deadshot is black now. White Deadshot was a multiversal traveler that nobody noticed. World's greatest detective, my ass. And it's also going to drive the entirety of the game's expansions. The first two DLC characters on deck are a multiverse Joker and a multiverse gender-bent mistress, Freeze. So get hyped for more people that use guns. Yay! Anyway, Earth 2's lone survivor is another Lex Luthor who you bring to the main Earth so he can break into a Batman vault and find tech to kill Green Lantern. He also hacks Waller's security to show the squad that she's really after Brainiac's mind control tech to enslave all the world's metas. Oh yeah, because it's totally a surprise that the bitch lord who's openly sabotaged us multiple times is secretly evil. So you fight Green Lantern next. It's like the game had constipation the first 10 hours and now it's blowing through the story like crap through a goose. And by the way, this is supposed to be the John Stewart Green Lantern, whose entire deal is supposed to be that he's a deathly serious and strict no-nonsense Marine, bringing military discipline to the League. But there's a plaque in the Hall of Justice saying he's a freaking architect instead, and he acts like a cocky jackass. He's basically New 52 Hal Jordan in blackface because the writers thought that Batman made the real Jon Stewart redundant. This fight, you have to blow up a bunch of Green Lantern's constructs to weaken his shields until he's vulnerable, at which point you can shoot him either for 3 seconds or until you've knocked off 1/8 of his health bar. I'm not entirely sure how it works, I just know it's annoying. And once Green Lantern dies, the first cool thing to happen all game occurs as King Shark takes the Green Lantern ring and summons a giant Jaws shark to punch through the shield over the Skull Ship. This isn't even slightly how Green Lantern's ring is supposed to work, but honestly, the ring's rules are so inconsistent in the comics that they basically work however the plot at hand says they work. And then you can tell the writers backed themselves into a corner because the ring drives King Shark nuts somehow until they have to pry it off and it falls and it's just gone now.
Well, that's just lazy writing.
Waller fires a nuke at the Skull Ship because the game has already forgotten that she's supposed to be after the mind control tech. But then Superman makes his first appearance all damn game to stop the nuke and he goes off to fight Wonder Woman while the squad spends some filler missions escorting Waller back to the Hall of Justice. Why she left the Hall of Justice in the first place is not explained. I figure she went to get away from the nuke, but nobody else left to get away from the nuke. It's just busy work while Wonder Woman dies. You realize that even if the game reveals that the Brainwashed League members are fakes or whatever, this world's Wonder Woman is still dead as shit, right? That's not getting undone. Superman gets stabbed in the chest with a huge hunk of kryptonite, and all it does is give him constipation. Lex speculates that Brainiac's been monkeying with his DNA to resist kryptonite, which still doesn't explain how the dude can have his heart punched all the way through with a jagged spear and be perfectly fine. You need to catch Batman so Lex can study the DNA mutation, which means doing more filler missions to find the new Batcave. And then we get a sad glimpse of the brilliant developers that we know Rocksteady to be. Batman floods the Batcave with fear toxin, and we play as the squad one by one navigating a hallucination Batcave to operate vents, all while avoiding traps and with the squad members hearing voices in their heads hammering at their insecurities. It's a great moment spotlighting the kind of game that Rocksteady should have been making instead of this dreck. And then the writers back themselves into a corner again because it turns out that Harley Quinn worked a lot with Scarecrow, got a PhD in neurochemistry, and spontaneously pulls her own fear gas straight out of her ass to fight Batman. Bullshit! And Batman barely even tries to fight you. It's damn near a cutscene, boss. This is pathetic. Lex studies Batman's corruption and develops gold kryptonite that'll kill Superman. And now we reach the viral moment. To lure Superman out for a fight, the squad drags the crippled Batman out to a park, mocks him for several minutes, and shoots him in the head. The Batman from Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Knight is dead. Okay, let's unpack this in a rational way. Contrary to widespread reporting, this was not Kevin Conroy's final Batman performance. DC was pretty much forced to leak that Conroy has a role in the animated film Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 3, which is due out later this year. This is not the final note on Conroy's legacy. You do not murder his final performance. The real-world context is not that bad. The problem is this game is in continuity with the Arkham games, meaning you just killed off the Batman whose journey you followed in 4 legendary games that raised the bar for superhero titles. And yes, I count Arkham Origins because go to hell. And he doesn't go out in a blaze of glory. It's a mean-spirited and pointless death with him broken, mocked, and dragged out into the street for a cold execution to be thrown away like a piece of trash. And now those beloved games feel hollow. The game establishes that Robin is dead too, by the way, so he doesn't even leave a legacy behind after all those games. And yeah, nobody expects this death to stick because story expansions are in the pipeline, but that just points to how doomed this venture was from the very start. Either they mean it and you're slaughtering beloved heroes for a contrived and forced story, or they don't mean it and the whole premise was a fake stunt and we're not supposed to care what happens. Either way, the game loses! Anyway, you fight Superman. Guys barely had any lines all game and maybe a minute or two of screen time. No member of the squad has a personal vendetta with him. They've done nothing to make you care about this boss. He's just kind of there. Superman mostly works the same way as the Flash. He covers the arena in massive area effect attacks that pile on cheap damage with basically no way to heal. And then Superman dies. He gets no final words, and the game cannot rush hard enough to bring on Brainiac. You killed Superman, and nobody gives a shit. Also, it did not slip my notice that there are Flash, Green Lantern, and Batman-infused enemies. There are no Superman-enhanced enemies. Between that and his pitiful amount of lines in screen time, it's like they actively tried to cut Superman from the game altogether.
I full-on believe that a panicked Warner Brothers executive ran into the office one day and this was the conversation. Fans are sick to death of evil Superman! Cut him out! Cut him out! What? We can't do that! You had us make a game about fighting the Justice League! You can't have a league without Superman! Just take out all of his scenes and lines! We can pretend that he's not even here! He was in the teaser trailer! You put him on the game's box! What? Fuck!
Brainiac finally shows his butt-ugly face and gets a pretty good introduction as he tries to assimilate the squad, but then the writers back themselves into a corner again, and Luthor pulls some teleportation bullshit out and saves them. And then Luthor explains that there isn't just one Brainiac that you need to kill, there are 13! Multiversal Brainiacs from different dimensions are somehow involved in this plot, and the game isn't going to end until you've killed all 13 of them. I am so not even kidding about that. They finally introduce the final boss and then tell you that the final boss doesn't mean a damn thing. I've never heard of that shit. They dump some last-minute missions where you can get infamous weapons for Gizmo, Ivy, and Penguin that don't do anything. You have to protect some explosive trucks from enemies, which led to a hilarious glitch where the game forgot to spawn any enemies, so we just all sat around dancing the whole mission. So try this dance, move it like you own it, shake those pants. I like it when you show it, shoot me that glance, tells me that you know it, you're my new romance. Don't blow it. When you go to fight the first Brainiac, you're taken to a tiny new map on some other Earth where you have to run a few copy-pasted missions on a time limit before finally Brainiac fights you. And the first Brainiac literally turned himself into the Flash for a copy-paste of the Flash boss fight. This is getting more sad by the minute. This trip to another dimension ran like hell, by the way. Crap loads of lag, our hits took several seconds to register, if they registered at all, and enemies would just pop back and forth or vanish on a dime. I'm legitimately still surprised that the game didn't crash on us. This Brainiac dies. I don't even know if it's our Brainiac or not. Waller and Lex just kind of shrug and walk off because the invasion is still on and Metropolis is still a hellhole, and the credits roll. They sacked their ending so badly that the credits just start rolling out of nowhere. And now we come to the final insult. The moment that killed any last shred of goodwill that we had left for the game. At the end of the credits, Lois Lane reads a eulogy for Batman's death, and it's made blatantly obvious that she's talking about the late Kevin Conroy. She gives a touching speech giving tribute to a man who's meant so much to so many people in his life. Unless you were us, because this is what happened when we got to the end of the credits.
Maybe you're fucking kidding me. The game bugged out and it's not playing Kevin Conroy's eulogy.
Are you fucking?
I've looked this up online. Lois is supposed to be talking over this. That pisses me off more than any other bug we've run in here. For fucking sake!
Okay, go on a full rant. Go on a full rant now.
You had one job! One fucking job! God damn it!
That moment might just be the most enraged, insulted, and disgusted that I have ever been with a game for this channel. I know that glitch was probably a 1 in a million chance and we just happened to get the one, but that, a simple cutscene giving a eulogy for a legend, your colleague, your goddamn friend, and you can't even get it to play correctly. Conroy was already left off every tribute to those we lost list because the industry doesn't respect voice actors. Might as well pile on! Miles asked me at the time to rant on what happened, and my brain could only form one coherent thought. You had one job. And you failed him. Miles also likes to ask if I've got a clip from that 70s show to capture a situation, and I did find one that reflects our mood from that night.
Ooh, hey, you gonna yell?
No, I'm past yelling.
It's the dark side of the moon, my friend. It's a place so ugly, if it was a woman, even you wouldn't have sex with her.
That's bad.
But of course, this is a live service game, which means that you're meant to keep playing it after you've quote-unquote beaten it. You would think that the post-game would be built around fighting the other Brainiacs, but it's not. My hand to God, it turns out there's only the one Brainiac in the game at launch, and the other 12 are earmarked to be added in later in expansions. They're planning to drag out this Brainiac storyline for 5 whole seasons of DLC, with plans to adapt the 5th season into a proper ending in case the support gets cut. Oh, honey, no. You're working for Warner Brothers Discovery, a company that has shit-canned multiple finished movies for tax write-offs, and your game has already bled out its players. It's dropped below 1,000 active players on Steam, has less than half the all-time peak of Avengers, and dropped out of Xbox's top 50 played games. There is no way in hell that you're making it to 5 free DLC packages. I don't care if you have a roadmap. Anthem had a roadmap, and it didn't amount to jack shit. So what is there to do in the post-game now? Well, the game spawns 3 multiverse missions that you can play at multiple difficulties. Grinding these missions unlocks new endgame gear, and grinding the missions at high difficulties increases your level for that universe, which will add new gear to the pool. Yes, that is the entire endgame. A half hour of recycled content that you grind for gear. And the punchline? Most of the endgame gear is still crap. At best, the new equipment was a marginal improvement on what I already had, and the few times that the game graciously decided to drop this super duper endgame Bane-themed gear, it was worse in every conceivable way from my normal equipment. Oh, there's a bonus for equipping lots of Bane gear all at once. You can jump through 3 consecutive hoops to briefly double your damage output, which means nothing unless you're fighting a brute at that exact time. Literally the only worthwhile gear I got from the post-game was a shield mod that doubled my shield bar, so I almost never had to worry about dying from that point on. So the gear is either worthless, or it's busted. There's also an endgame leveling system for characters. Once a squad member has been maxed out, you can keep leveling them up to earn upgrades for the entire team. But you have to remember, this game hates you. So not only does the game strangle off progress to where you now level up at about 1/3 of the pace, but even when you get a squad point, it only boosts a stat by 0.5%! Worthless upgrades and trash gear for playing half an hour over and over again. What part of that is supposed to keep me around until the expansions are ready? Here's the thing. My Captain Boomerang has a maxed out elite shotgun and sniper rifle. He poops grenades on an all-brand diet, has a truckload of health, and charges his traversal attack so quickly that I can one-shot kill an entire area pretty much any time that I want. There is officially 0 point to me grinding the game anymore. I've got a flying death machine at my disposal. I won! Between drops of worse gear and squad points that don't do squat, there is no reward for going any further. In every one of these live service games, I inevitably hit a point where I become so disgusted that I shut the game off and never come back. And here that point came when I hit Finite Crisis level 10. You unlock a 4th endgame activity, oh perish the thought, a survival mode where you have to keep killing enemies to raise your time limit. The difficulty keeps increasing, but near as I can tell, the only difference is the enemies get gradually more health. Whoop-de shit. Just to drive home what a joke the game's balancing is, my first attempt, I made it to mastery level 16. And the only reason I stopped there is the game began spawning all the enemies so far away that it was physically impossible to reach them before time ran out. At one point, the game spawned a brute who restored his shield the second that I dropped it, and even that didn't stop me. So I kicked the survival mode's ass, made it to an ostensibly high difficulty, and I survived for half an hour. And what rewards did I get? Well, I didn't increase my Finite Crisis level. Boomerang didn't level up at all to where I didn't get a single squad point. And I got 2 crappy loop drops that were lower tier than if I'd done any other mission on the base difficulty. So practically speaking,
you get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
And then for an extra kick in the pants, the game soft-locked on a loading screen the second I was done. I wash my hands of this garbage. We're still waiting on some kind of expose revealing how in the hell the game turned out the way it did, but I did get a few details courtesy of YouTube channel Gaming Bolt. Jeff Johns announced a Suicide Squad game all the way back in 2010, with Warner Bros. Montreal starting the game in 2012, only for that game to abruptly be cancelled in 2016. Supposedly, the game didn't impress Warner Bros. Management and the studio saw a mass exodus of high-level staff. Then in 2017, 1 year after Montreal cancelled a co-op Suicide Squad game, Rocksteady suddenly started working on a co-op Suicide Squad game. What a coinky-dink! It's almost like Warner Brothers just dumped the half-finished game on Rocksteady's doorstep like a sack of dog shit! We don't have details yet on what happened on Rocksteady's end, only vague reports of multiple false starts. The studio's founders quit to start 100-star games, so that's not exactly a good sign. And there was allegedly a leaked early script circulating on Reddit. The supposed early script ends with the squad all dying in the fight with Brainiac, and then the Flash is revived with a Lazarus pit so he can run back in time and retcon the story. Son of a bitch! Flashpoint is not the only Flash story! That last part implies to me that regardless of what Rocksteady is forced to say by management, this catastrophe wasn't always going to be a live service, since the plot used to have an actual ending. I don't know what the hell happened to this game. For an open world live service that was in development for at least 7 years, up to 13, the amount of content on display is pathetic, and the complete lack of Justice League battles in the post-game feels like they tried to abandon their own premise. But since Miles and Schnick were good enough to accompany me on this particular journey, it seems only right to ask them their opinions before we wrap things up.
It's hard to put into words just how bad this game is. I was really trying to give this game the benefit of the doubt. I went from thinking, this game isn't too bad, to, well, it's not as bad as Marvel's Avengers or Anthem, at least, to, okay, this might be worse than Marvel's Avengers and Anthem, to, wow, this game is really bad, to, this game is shallow and has very little meat on its bones when you break it all down. This game has a story where things just happen, and the only things that were keeping me invested were the voice performances of Tara Strong and Kevin Conroy as Harley Quinn and Batman, respectively. Once you find a certain loadout of gear and weapons that work for you, almost all of their gear becomes pointless and you just want the same gear you have, simply with incrementally higher stats, and then the game just gets extremely repetitive. This game has the worst and most pathetically anemic endgame I've ever seen. I'll close with these two thoughts. One, I'm glad this game is in Kevin Conroy's last outing as the Dark Knight, since we will get to hear his voice in Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 3. Two, I had a ton of fun playing this game with my two good pals, Jado and Schnick. It was fun hanging out and working on this joint project together.
I could go on about how this is just another crappy live service game and call it a day, but this is a game that kind of makes other live service games like Anthem and Marvel's Avengers better by comparison. Every mechanic they added just made the game worse. Like, I feel like it would have been better if the game was just a box standard looter shooter like Anthem. Because number one, Anthem had a better traversal system because the traversal systems in Suicide Squad were just weird to use at best. The things they add to the combats make it more than just a third-person shooter, like the stupid counter mechanic that has an awkward button combination. It doesn't work nearly as well as the counter system in the Arkham games. The fact that they force the melee combat when it's clunky at best with some of the characters just to get rid of enemy armor. The fact that they force you to do missions where you can only kill enemies with certain attacks that barely work. Combine it with perks that have such convoluted descriptions you can't even tell what they do. It's just overall, the game just was way more convoluted than it had to be. All of the game's efforts to try and spice itself up and make it different from other live service games, it just made itself way more convoluted than it had to be.
Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is like if the term corporate mandate became a physical entity. You can almost hear the calls from moron Warner Brothers executives demanding everything in the game to chase trends, and Warner Brothers signs the check, so Rocksteady didn't have a choice. It's like Rocksteady themselves were the Suicide Squad, getting yelled dumb, self-serving orders by a shitty boss that treats them all like trash, said boss openly sabotaging them at every turn, and Rocksteady had to follow every last word or else be terminated. A failure on every level and a disgrace to all involved. Once again, the Suicide Squad lives up to their name.
I believe Riddler's last appearance was creating racetracks for the Batman.
Hey, that's right. Why don't we get any of that?
'Cause we're not the Batman, we'll never be the Batman. We're just the overworked, underappreciated B-team.
I thought we were folding on.
To say that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League had a rough launch would be a massive understatement. There was viral outrage at the plot in general, and Batman's rather inglorious death in particular. There continue to be server problems out the ass, and the few people who can play the game have lambasted it for being mind-numbingly repetitive, endlessly recycling a small handful of content to the point of pure tedium. The game's peak players on Steam are less than half the also-failed Marvel's Avengers. Its active Steam player count tends to hang around 500. The game quickly fell out of the top 20 played games on PlayStation and the top 50 on Xbox. By all observable metrics, the game has flopped hard. I ranted about the thing for nearly an hour, and somehow we're still not done. See, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is a live service game, and the end of March saw its first content update with a major expansion, adding new story content, 2 new Brainiac boss battles, and an exciting brand new playable character to the game's roster, the Joker.
I'm here, bitches! And I brought favors for everybody!
Well, the Joker expansion has finally landed, and my god! This has got to be the worst expansion to a live service game, or game in general, in history. If this isn't a giant red flag that Suicide Squad is on life support, I don't know what is.
Medical report. Stat.
You're a very sick man.
Flattery won't save you.
Let's start out with the big reason that people were excited, getting to play as the Joker. How does he play? Is he another copy-paste of the other characters with little to no individuality or uniqueness? Well, here's the thing. You don't actually get the Joker. You have to unlock the Joker by killing the first of the new Brainiacs, which wouldn't be so bad. Except you can't fight the new Brainiac until you grind the new multiverse levels to farm a new arbitrary level called Fear. You need to get your Fear to level 35 to access the Brainiac fight, and each mission that we played increased our Fear level by 1. If we were lucky. So yes, the Joker is hidden behind an 8-hour grind wall.
You do not get access to the Joker until you rescue him by killing the second Brainiac. And you cannot go fight the second Brainiac until you grind up to get Fear level 35 by repeating the same goddamn...
Wait,
yes.
What the fuck? What?
However,
What? Oh my... Fuck!
I'm sorry, I should be doing the proper Joker laugh.
You have got to be shitting me! Like, fuck!
Like I said, this expansion was made with a budget of about $2.
I know you think I'm kidding about that, but I'm not. There are I repeat, 0 new story missions added to the game for the Joker or the new Brainiac. You just grind some quote-unquote new missions until a new arbitrary number gets high enough. And I put new missions in the biggest air quotes possible because the missions in this expansion are all copy-pasted repeats of levels from the base game. Here's a level where you protect a poison ivy plant. Here's a level where you destroy a big cannon. Here are hordes of grunts and brutes and a survival mode, all against the basic enemies that you've already been fighting for about 20 hours! This entire expansion is grinding a few repeated missions until you get a single rematch with a pre-existing boss, and that's it! It's like Rocksteady saw Anthem's Tombs of the Legionnaires and thought its big problem was that it needed to be worse. And here's the punchline. Do you not feel like grinding for 8 hours to unlock the new character? Well, you can get the Joker early and start using him right away. By paying $10. After Rocksteady swore left and right that there would be 0 pay-to-win microtransactions, and the only paid DLC would be cosmetic. Pay $10 to skip 8 hours of grind. Kill the Justice League has officially reached the point of charging you money not to play it. Just wow, Rocksteady. You really pulled a Lucy and the football. Promise us this brand new character, hype him all to hell, and then pull the rug out and demand money if we don't feel like dedicating an entire work day to your bullshit. Instant gratification, if you cough up the cash for it. Contrast with the also failed Marvel's Avengers, where every time they added a new character, you got that new character right away. And Kate Bishop, Hawkeye, and Black Panther all had their own story campaigns with actual cutscenes and narratives and new content. It wasn't until the game was running on fumes with Spider-Man, Jane Foster, and Winter Soldier that they started to forego proper expansions, and Suicide Squad is starting out at that desperation point. The game's only a month and a half old, and Rocksteady is already at Avengers' deathbed. Just how did they think this was okay? Alright, I'm being a little facetious. There's a little more new stuff here. There are new maps for Metropolis and the Elseworld missions. They're exactly the same as the old maps, just with Joker graffiti and some gift wrap reskins. They drop power-ups into the missions now. They don't really do anything except the one that grants infinite ammo, which still barely does anything because everyone drops ammo anyway. There's new gear to farm. The new gear pool is so shallow that you'll constantly be swimming in duplicates to the point of comedy. And aside from a reverse flash mod that I think grants you good buffs and a polka dot man grenade that I think covers a wide area, it's hard to tell for all the barfed up visual effects, all the new gear was junk to me anyway. Some of the new gear is Scarecrow themed and deals a new status ailment called Poison. Poison doesn't seem to actually do anything, and the Scarecrow gear that I farmed was pure crap. And of course the major change to the missions are the new modifiers that they apply to the mastery levels, aka the difficulties that you need to grind in order to get the good equipment. So let's just peruse these modifiers here, okay? They nerfed the frenzy and super moves, which all but wipes out your pre-existing builds. They nerfed the burning ailment, which directly screws the Joker. Enemies are immune to venom frenzy, which directly makes all that Bane gear you farmed completely useless. Enemies all revive unless poisoned. Enemies regenerate health unless poisoned. Enemies all highly resistant to damage unless poisoned. Enemies take 95% less damage unless poisoned. Are you kidding me? So poisoning doesn't really do shit on its own, but they made the enemies immune to literally everything else. So basically, if you want to get anywhere in the new expansion, you have to hijack all your character builds to use the crappy new equipment. Brilliant move, making a game based on loot that then forces you to throw out all your best loot. What the fuck is the matter with you? I cannot find the words to convey what a friggin' ripoff this expansion is. The big new content update that was going to save the game, and all you get is a grind wall of copy-pasted missions with a copy-pasted boss and a copy-pasted character at the end of it. I had planned to just rail on how the expansion doesn't add dick and bug out, but speaking of bugging out, it nearly broke us how unbelievably glitchy this expansion is. It's like Rocksteady saw the mass negative reactions to the base game and took them as a challenge to make it even worse. I had to close and re-enter the game twice just to get past the first screen explaining the new expansion. Almost every multiverse incursion that we played experienced severe lag and glitched enemies to where it felt like we were only barely inflicting damage. And the second incursion we tried, the server crashed and cheated us out of any progress. It felt like damn near every level we'd run into at least one brute that had unlimited health or got stuck in slow motion to where it couldn't die. In the base game, I ran into a bug where my gun immediately read as having 0 ammo, reloaded, then kept up that cycle until the gun was empty. Yeah, that happened to me dozens of times playing this expansion. Enemies by and large seemed lethargic, like they barely even noticed that we were there, barely attacking, and snipers taking so long to fire that I had plenty of time to shoot them back. And my god, the levels where you have to escort a truck to one of Brainiac's terraforming machines, these levels are so busted they barely work. I could let slide the truck's horrid pathfinding to where it spastically sputters to its destination a few feet at a time. I could almost forgive the towers you have to destroy by getting past brutes that glitch to where their death animation takes full-on minutes, so they just sit there stalling any progress. But the worst part is when you have to protect the truck from enemies. The truck reaches the terraformer and a clock appears on the screen for 2.5 minutes. This clock is broken. The mission timer was never unanimous among the three of us. It was jumping back up constantly for absolutely zero in-game reason. Even when it got down to the last 5 seconds and hit 0, it would bug out and refill to where the final countdown would trigger multiple times. The game is not supposed to do this. We would seriously be stuck in this one spot for this one mission for over 15 minutes at a time because they couldn't program a clock. Are you freaking kidding? Even garbage switch shovelware hucksters can program a goddamn clock! The game bugged to where we couldn't use the squad ultimate move for something like an hour. Miles got stuck in the scenery again. We did a Toyman mission where you have to rescue civilians, only the civilians' health at any given moment was determined via random number generator, and you just had to sit on ass for like a minute until the prompt to save or release a civilian finally decided to work. But I think by far my favorite glitch came one time when I tried using Boomerang's Traversal move. See, Boomerang can teleport around a group of enemies, dealing a ton of damage, only the game bugged out at one point to where he didn't come back. Boomerang finally managed to escape the game, and at the end of a truck escort mission that took half a damn hour between a bugged truck, bugged timers, and bugged enemies, the disappearing glitch almost happened again, except my bugging out of existence finally seemed to push the truck to finish the damn level. Oh, and I found a Forbes article claiming that paying for the Joker only works about half the time. I have no words for how flat out non-functional this expansion is. missions bugged to go on forever, or to be flat out impossible. Rocksteady said that they couldn't work on patching the game because they were too busy working on expansions. Might be time to reassess your priorities, dillweeds! Exactly 1 week after the Joker DLC dropped, the game announced a new springtime promotion, giving away completely free skins themed on Easter. And King Shark's Easter outfit turns him brown to look like a chocolate bunny. He looks like he's made of shit. Actual, literal, human shit. They should call this skin the Sewer Shark. All you have to do to get these terrible skins is to log in daily for a week straight and go to the shop to claim your giveaway. The shop, where it dangles the Joker in front of you alongside all those other skins if you just cough up some cash. Please, for the love of God! They are so desperate. They are so sad and desperate to force player numbers up by any means necessary, to drag you into the shop on the off chance you might buy something to keep the lights on for a few more days. Actually, you want to know just how desperate they are to boost their player numbers? The game is selling a battle pass, which none of us bought because battle passes are a scam and we're not tool bags. You pay money up front and then the battle pass gives you extra rewards for playing missions. It takes 20 missions to unlock a single reward on this pass. It takes 1,500 missions to clear the entire thing. People estimate that you'd have to play for 200 hours to clear the entire battle pass. You can't make this up. The battle pass is also bugged to sporadically give you rewards even if you haven't paid for it, because I got the Wayne Tech Deadshot skin for totally free. Thanks, you buggy sack of crap! It was seriously over 7 hours before we finally got high enough ranks to challenge Brainiac, and the fight itself took so long it knocked it up to 8 hours of work before we could use the Joker. And the reason that it took so long is the new Brainiac fight is a mountain of bullshit! Brainiac floats above you not doing anything, and you just have to fight hordes of goons. The exact same as the hours of grind you went through to get this far. The exact same thing you do all damn game! Eventually, you kill enough enemies to drop his shield, you shoot him until he loses like 1/8 off his health bar if you're lucky, and then the shield goes back up and you go back to doing the same damn thing. The fight is torturously drawn out since it takes forever for Brainiac's shield to drop, and the fight is scripted with 3 events where dropping his shield doesn't actually do anything, because he gets into some kind of giant form where he shoots at you with a Gatling gun that doesn't actually hurt even if he hits you. He spawns mines! And the mines don't explode! The mines don't do literally the one thing that mines are designed to do! But you know what made this fight just extra insufferable? My shotgun bugged out to drop all of its ammo right before the battle began, and I was not allowed to pick up more shotgun ammo. I am dead serious. I caught it on video. Here's me walking through a sea of dropped ammunition, and my shotgun didn't refill at all. The game bugged out to completely disable my primary weapon, so I had to do this whole boss fight with nothing but melee and a sniper rifle. This broken-ass expansion can't do anything right! The Brainiac boss fight that they hyped as this expansion's entire reason for being, and all you do is fight more of the same enemies you've been fighting the rest of the game. This is like less than 0 ideas! So now that we've collectively fought more copy-paste enemies for an entire work day at an actual job, we finally unlocked the Joker. And bright side, all of us could use him at once.
I don't care who thinks we're silly. You be Daffy and I'll be Dilly. We'll order up 2 bowls of chili, setting the woods on fire.
I call our new all-Joker squad Queer Die for the straight guy because this new Joker is flaming levels of gay stereotype.
Put it in me. I'm gonna do your challenge, but afterwards we need to talk about your aesthetic choices, Igna. My Batman never held me like that. Maybe I went overboard on the chloroform?
Seriously, this guy does not feel like the Joker. He's got no menace, no threatening presence, no chaotic energy, no grit. He's so sanitized and safe. I'd call him a Saturday morning cartoon Joker, except I don't want to insult the actual Saturday morning cartoon Jokers.
You've got Moxie! I feed Moxie to the hyenas. This mound of diseased hyena filth who's not fit to lick the dirt from my spats! But I digress.
He gets a grand total of 2 cutscenes, one when you boot up and one when you unlock him, and he has basically 0 interactions with any of the rest of the squad. How you add in the Joker and have 0 interactions with Harley Quinn is a level of failure that I cannot comprehend. Oh, and the first levels where we all tried out the Joker bugged out to where he could barely damage the enemies and our attacks didn't do shit. Should just call him the Janker! Okay, Janker's traversal mechanics badly need a tutorial, but they're actually pretty fun. He has a super jump that you can fire with L1 and X twice without having to land, and his gliding almost kinda works like the flying in Mario 64. Holding R1 and X gets you a decent amount of speed, even though it still works on a frustratingly small overheat meter. He can also hover in midair to shoot people just like Deadshot, like the one bit of useful feedback that Rocksteady actually listened to. But past that, Joker just works the same as every other character in the game. His skill tree seems to reward you for using burning status ailments, like you light enemies on fire and Janker spreads it and then he gets damage buffs. It's at least a hint of a different playstyle, but that's it. Oh, and now that I'm playing the Janker, every single mission increases my fear ranking by 3 instead of the 1 we were getting before. Those fuckers artificially cut your progression down to 1/3 to try and chokehold you into paying for Joker! This just has to be pure spite at this point! Truth be told, the Janker is kinda fun to use. It's nice to have a new character that's well developed. The problem is literally the entire expansion around him. Bugged out the ass, boring rehashes of the base game, frustrating modifiers trying to force you to throw out all your old equipment, and a boss that is barely even a boss. It's like all the team's effort went into Janker's traversal mechanic, and all the rest of this expansion was bashed out in 5 minutes. The Control, C, and V keys of all Rocksteady's workstations are worn down to nubs. But hey, once you get the Joker, you can immediately use him to fight the game's third Brainiac, right? Well, no! You can't! Rocksteady is so hosed that they can only manage to release half of the expansion at a time! That second Brainiac that they promised is coming at some indeterminate point later this spring. And I'm pretty sure that when the second half does drop, it's just going to be another empty copy-pasted grind wall with more useless gear they'll try to force you to use anyway! Oh, and the third Brainiac has been teased as a repeat of the Superman boss fight. So, I have an awkward question. The first 3 Brainiacs have been redos of the Flash, Green Lantern, and Superman boss battles. Batman is the only other boss in the base game, and they have 10 Brainiacs to go. So after they rehash Batman, and you know they're going to do it, are they just gonna circle back and copy all the Leaguers again? Or is Rocksteady actively trying to kill the game before they have to answer that question? And there's one more little detail that makes Rocksteady's expansion plans so much more confusing. Rocksteady announced that they have 4 new playable characters in the pipeline. Joker was the first, Mistress Freeze is the second, Lawless, aka Deadshot's daughter, is third, and the 4th season of expansions has been announced that it will add Deathstroke. Deathstroke is already done. Seriously, hackers are playing as him right now. And Warner Brothers is playing whack-a-mole, taking down all videos and photos of him to provide evidence. So, somebody please make this make sense. Season 1 was so ungodly rushed that they could only squeeze out half of it at a time, but the star of Season 4 is already done. What in the hell is Rocksteady actually doing? When Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League first launched, it was merely the prototypical corporate-mandated product. Executives threw every buzzword into a cauldron with a sporadically popular IP to chase trends left and right with barely any real thought to it. It's baffling that Rocksteady's name was attached to it, but I at least understand in general how that dreck happened. But this Joker expansion, this broken, empty, padded, shameful, recycled, embarrassing, pathetic excuse for new content? No. I need an explanation for how the hell this happened. Your game has bled out its players. Rocksteady should be pulling out all the stops to entice players back and win over any scrap of goodwill that they can, and instead all the focus is on bludgeoning their remaining players with grind walls the size of Mount Everest. How did this happen? Did Warner Brothers slash their budget? Were they way too rushed getting any kind of an expansion out the door? Is Deathstroke's completed state just a sign that Rocksteady is being grossly mismanaged and has no idea or focus for what it's doing? Or is it my personal headcanon that Rocksteady is actively trying to murder the game so they can get back to doing anything else? Are they trying to botch the online multiplayer game in such spectacular fashion that nobody ever asks them to make another one? Well, they're well on their way to that goal because Season of the Joker has got to be the worst expansion I've ever seen. Even the game's most die-hard of defenders are widely abandoning ship, as Janker has made it clear that there is zero hope left for this thing to rebound. I don't even know what Rocksteady could possibly do to salvage the game at this point, but I know someone who's got a suggestion.
We take that man there and slap him in that box there and roll it into that vat of acid there.
This is gonna make for a good clip.
Bees no good.
Bees no good.
Bees no good.
I'm outstyling all of you.
Apologies to anyone who's sick of me talking about this game. If you want to see me talk about other stuff, my Rebel Assault and Still Life 2 reviews are struggling. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League still refuses to accept reality and die, so Season 1, Episode 2, Duality has been released. This is the second half of the expansion that added the Joker. It adds one shitty new boss fight, one shitty new enemy type, one shitty new mission, one shitty new status ailment, and a bunch of shitty new equipment barely distinguishable from all the other loot that you've been collecting. The only reason this crap expansion's even worth talking about is the sheer desperation of Rocksteady that's on display at this point. This episode shouldn't be titled Duality. It should be titled, Dear God, we're sorry, please take us back, we promise we'll fix it and do better next time. For starters, the new expansion opens with the Janker expositing to nobody that he totally plans on becoming a villain again once this whole mess is over, because we're sorry! Look, we'll start writing him like he's the actual Joker and not a generic gay stereotype, we're sorry! There are patient interview tapes where the Janker and Harley Quinn actually interact and talk about friggin' nothing of any significance because we're sorry! Look, we're actually making use of literally the one character relationship in the entire game that anybody gives a rat's ass about! Anyway, there are still zero story missions or any actual narrative to the new levels. You just grind up a few of the same missions that you've been playing for about 20 hours until your ranking in the new expansion is high enough to go fight Brainiac. Except, you know how in the first part of the Joker expansion you had to get to Fear level 35, which took us 8 goddamn hours of mind-numbing, boring-ass grind to achieve? Yeah, the new Brainiac takes Duality level 10, which only takes about 2 hours. This full expansion takes 2 hours to finish. We're sorry, we are so sorry! Look, we'll cut down on the grind for all the shit that you actually want, so we're not just openly wasting all your time with copy-paste content! Oh, and another thing that they have apologized for, the Battle Pass doesn't take nearly as long to complete anymore. From what I've heard. We're not dumb enough to pay for Battle Passes in this group. So, it's the same old grind. You have missions killing goons, missions guarding poison ivy plants, missions guarding hacks friggin' terminals, missions rescuing civilians for Toyman, and missions where you smash crystals to expose incubators to destroy them. And yes, I am always in favor of crystal smashing. Except a funny thing seems to have happened. Normally when you play these incubator levels and you destroy crystals to drop the incubator shields, at least one of the crystals will regenerate to where there's kinda some pressure on you to hurry up. As of this expansion, in addition to power lines being colored so you can tell which crystals lead to which incubators, crystals don't regenerate anymore. We're sorry! Look, we'll neuter the missions to make them less annoying. Just please keep playing the same levels over and over! They did, however, add one new mission type to the game. Missions where Brainiac is phasing a satellite from another world or some crap, and you have to fight enemies that are phased into other dimensions. It's a copy-paste of the hack terminal missions, only you have to do it 3 times. And now new enemies will randomly become immune to all damage unless you interact with a terminal to where you can shoot them. So you have to constantly backtrack to terminals and constantly guess at whether you can damage an enemy and for how long. It's a cloned mission made exponentially more annoying. And speaking of annoying, the new enemies! Episode 2 adds Green Lantern-infused enemies that gain shields that are immune to everything, except poison, because we're totally going to keep trying to force you to hijack your builds while teasing that poison builds are going to be useless soon. And the only way to render Green Lantern enemies vulnerable is to shoot their constructs. Primarily big floating mines that don't do anything, and every now and then a rifle that doesn't do anything. Rocksteady must think Green Lantern is useless. But yeah, the problem is that these enemies will get their shields, but the constructs that you need to shoot to render them vulnerable won't friggin' appear. You have to sit on your ass surrounded by invincible enemies until eventually the damn game wakes up and remembers to spawn the shit that makes the game function. And then you can actually fight them and keep playing. Green Lantern enemies aren't even hard. Their constructs take like 2 seconds to spot and shoot. They were just programmed by a douchebag! There's also a new enemy called the Promotonaut, which that's easy for people to say, that runs around promoting enemies to higher tiers, meaning that it runs around turning enemies into brutes because they don't have as many enemy types as they think they do. But here's the kicker. Near as I can tell, the Promotionauts are invulnerable to everything except the Suicide Strike, a special move that you have to charge. The primary way to deal with them seems to be to just follow them around, ignoring all the other enemies, to just shoot the enemy they want to promote and keep doing that endlessly. You are given a warning when an enemy is being promoted, but the warning is so short that you can't do anything about it. I'm starting to get the sense that Rocksteady has absolutely zero idea how to design looter-shooter enemies that are an actual threat, because the new enemies, the new mission, and the new infusion are all designed around making things flat-ass invincible. Like they can't think of any other mechanics. Except it's not challenging, just friggin' annoying. What's funny is the Green Lantern enemies are another attempt to force you to farm poison gear to get through their shields. Except Miles had an armor-piercing pistol, and I had a shotgun that made enemies easy to shield harvest, which also penetrates the shields. We didn't need any new gear to make the Green Lanterns our bitches. At the very least, I'd say that Episode 2 is more stable than the first Janker expansion. We didn't experience any weapon bugs or broken missions. Miles playing Harley got stuck in a wall again, but I just blame God for that at this point. It turns out there's a good reason we never ran into a bugged mission, though. Remember in the first Janker update video when I ranted about the terraforming missions? The missions that used to work fine, but in the expansion they have bugged timers to where they can go on forever and there's nothing you can do about it? Yeah, they took out those missions. Episode 2 has a total of 0 terraformer missions because I guess Rocksteady just couldn't figure out how to fix them. There are also no penguin rescue missions, maybe a single Toyman rescue mission, and 0 multiverse incursion poison ivy missions. The missions that you have to farm for mastery levels and good gear have been stripped down to 1 incubator stage and 5 basic combat encounters. Okay, that's not even an apology. That's just giving up at this point. The Janker expansion was also infamous for introducing mastery level modifiers that basically rendered all the game's equipment useless except for new poison gear in a desperate bid to force you to farm fresh equipment and play longer. That's all been thrown out the window, and now mastery level modifiers are a few passive gameplay buffs that, honestly, we barely even noticed and felt like they had little to no impact on gameplay. We're sorry! sorry, we are so sorry. We'll stop forcing you to throw out all your stuff. Just please take us back, please. One positive change that Rocksteady added was the ability to scrap gear as soon as you get it from the mission reward screen. It doesn't entirely fix the inventory, but it's at least something, and I made heavy use of this feature because, much like Part 1, most of the expansion gear is pure crap. I got one reverse flash boomerang that I liked. Schnick got one Black Manta rifle that he liked. That's it. In fact, the rarity of the loot drop seems to have decreased, so there's even less point to playing the non-mastery level missions than there was before. The new gear is Two-Face themed to where you can inflict a new ailment called Punishment, which looks like it's just a generic critical hits deal more damage ailment that feels like it barely does anything. And the perks you get for equipping a full Two-Face loadout? Yeah, at a glance, pretty much useless. The most I noticed using any Two-Face gear is that every frickin' 30 seconds or so, my Janker would toss a big-ass coin off to the side doing Lord knows what. One other desperately needed update is that the incursion missions take fewer resources to play because we're sorry, we'll take out as much of the grind as we can, just please don't leave us! But I will actually be nice to Episode 2 of Suicide Squad's DLC because there were two things that our whole group actually really enjoyed. The first was this.
Look at King Shark.
King Shark's trying to dance with us but doesn't know how.
Well, I got the brand new combine harvester and I'll give you the key. I love King Shark trying to dance.
He's trying so hard. We capped off our playthrough by all dancing on a rooftop, and the AI King Shark got stuck in the middle of us and started spastically jittering around to where he was dancing too. That was an honest, rare moment of joy for... Wait, what the fuck?! Yeah, you remember how all the characters got Easter-themed springtime outfits a while back? Well, Episode 2 added a bug to Deadshot's spring outfit that turns him completely invisible. His skin glitches to where he's just a set of gear floating around. He's invisible during exploration, he's invisible during gameplay, he's invisible while crossing multiverses, he's even invisible on the main menu! And the funniest part? When we went back to the Hall of Justice where Deadshot takes his helmet off, it turned him into a floating head! A skin that used to work fine is now bugged out. How does that even happen? It's like they saw the Insomniac Spider Cube become meme fodder and wanted a slice of that pie. Even though the expansion only takes about 2 hours to finish, it still took us 2 gameplay sessions to complete. See, our first stream of these levels, I was the only one to get any progress on the duality level that you need to fight Brainiac. Miles and Schnick didn't get any progress, and it took us a while to figure out that it wasn't a bug. You see, you don't actually get any Episode 2 progress unless you go into some obscure menu and select the correct option. Even if you're playing in Episode 2's map, playing Episode 2's levels with someone else who's getting Episode 2 progress, you don't automatically get Episode 2 progress. Like, what kind of dumb asshole programs the game that way? Can you interpret that as anything other than a scam to force you to play longer? The third Brainiac turns into a clone of Superman, and to Rocksteady's credit, I don't think this is actually too similar to the pre-existing Superman fight. Mainly because the pre-existing fight was busted and he flooded the field in cheap damage to where you were constantly hemorrhaging health. Instead, Brainiac just kind of flies around attacking one player at a time and constantly changing his target to where he was barely a threat to any of us, since the rest of us would heal up before his eye turned to us again. He just kind of flies around doing nothing, and every now and then you have to stop to shoot power crystals, exactly like the normal-ass incubator missions. He was much shorter and much easier than the Green Lantern fight, because we're sorry, look, we'll make the bosses less annoying, just please keep killing those other Brainiacs, you only have 10 left! The squad kills their third Brainiac, and you just reappear at the Hall of Justice. Expansion's over, there's no cutscene, There's not even a line of dialogue reflecting that you just took down another Brainiac. The expansion just cuts off the second you kill the boss. I know the dev team is working hard to try and create a viable product, but shit like this sends the message that they've given up. My takeaway from the new expansion was that Rocksteady was apologizing. Schnick's takeaway was that they quit. They added 2 new enemy types that barely do anything. They added 1 new mission that's pure garbage, and it feels like they've removed more content than they've added. Multiple mission types are gone. Modifiers that make enemies tougher are gone. Gizmo vehicles are gone. I don't think we ran into a single Batman-infused enemy the whole time, so that's another mechanic that's gone. 3/4 of the expansion's length, gone. Deadshot's friggin' Easter outfit, gone. They're still reusing the same maps, and weren't we supposed to get an offline mode? Still no word on that after 3.5 months. This new expansion feels like it's been stripped to the bone just to have something to release. But they're still plugging ahead, going by this supposedly official render of the next DLC character. And cripes, if this is real, way to make the most boring and generic Mr. Freeze design ever! Last time I talked about how hackers have been playing as Deathstroke, who's apparently done despite not releasing until wintertime, and the Deathstroke hacker has supposedly leaked the planned story for the remainder of Suicide Squad's DLC. Supposedly, Rocksteady's plan is to reveal that the Justice League is still alive and that we were killing clones in the base game. Every season of DLC from this point onward will involve rescuing a League member. Yes, this includes Batman, and yes, they supposedly planned this far enough ahead of time that Kevin Conroy voiced the expansions before he passed away. And after rescuing Batman, Green Lantern, and the Flash, the 5th expansion will see the Squad and the League team up to kill the final Brainiac and save the world. Yeah, good plan chopping your story in half to finish it later. Except the game has to last a full year from now for this plan to work. And they still pissed off their audience on purpose. Remember that one time when Marvel tried to claim that Captain America had always been a Nazi sleeper agent and it was universally hated, but Marvel kept claiming that they totally weren't backing down from it? They lied. Months later, they revealed that it was a fake alternate history cap and the real one came back at the end of their big event comic, Secret Empire. They just lied to try and hide a twist ending that everyone saw coming anyway, alienating massive chunks of the public for absolutely zero payoff. It's the same thing here. Rocksteady insisted for years that you totes magoats killed off the real Justice League because they either thought the controversy would sell the game or wanted to hide a pathetic twist for the expansions. And it blew up in their face on both fronts. People full-on boycotted the game so as not to see childhood icons get slaughtered, and the game is probably going to die before their stupid-ass story is completed. Rocksteady would be much better off just packaging whatever they have done into one DLC campaign called Save the Justice League and be done with it so the game can just end with dignity, but that won't happen. What do I think the future holds for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League? Well, Avengers and Anthem both strung along for over a year despite having no players. This thing could last a while on life support. I think, 3 seasons of expansions before everything falls apart. They won't add crap except the new characters that are apparently already done. The expansions will just exist so the game has updates. I think one of 2 things will signal the game's death knell. Either they'll release Deathstroke early out of desperation to attract players, or they'll announce that new content is on hold while they overhaul the game. Anthem 2.0 and all that shit. If either of those happen, this thing's over. But, who knows? This thing could drop dead at any time, and we'll be there to dance on its grave. We can dance if you want to, we can leave your friends behind, 'cause your friends don't dance, and if they don't dance, well, they're no friends of mine. Say we can go where we want to, a place where they will never find, and we can act like we come from out of this world and the real one far behind. We can dance.
So, Rocksteady delayed the Season of Freeze expansion for a whole 2 weeks at the last minute. Is anybody, ever gonna explain why? yeah. That's why.
Yes, there's a new season of DLC available for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, adding another new playable character in the form of gender-bent Elseworlds variant Mrs. Freeze. She's introduced in a cutscene establishing that she's the last survivor of a world that Brainiac froze over for some reason. Waller finds her and offers to rescue her and her frozen wife, Nora. And I'm sorry, it just amuses me that Mr. Freeze can become a lady, no problem, but Nora Freeze specifically is a canon event. Two things about this cutscene caught my attention. For one, Freeze's native Waller is the one from the friggin' fantastic Assault on Arkham movie. So you douchebags know what you should be doing, you just don't want to do it. And two, Waller says that she needs Freeze's help to rescue the Flash.
For my assistance in recovering the Flash, send a scientist to find a scientist. Is it logic?
I'm sorry, what? Yes, Kill the Justice League has finally tipped its hand that Brainiac's brainwashed Justice League members are still alive, and the Suicide Squad has been tasked with rescuing them while fighting the other Brainiacs. They've never explained how they're still alive, or how Waller found out about it, and nobody in the squad reacts to this news or their new assignment at all. This is the first time it's been mentioned in the entire game without needing to read secondhand about plot hacks or obscure Easter eggs, and everyone just responds to it like it's already common knowledge. It seriously feels like there was supposed to be a major cutscene at the end of the Joker season setting up the new story, but they ran out of time, budget, manpower, or all of the above, so we're just pretending everyone already knows what's going on. Whatever. The game flashes like 5 update boards before you can get into the game, and wait. What does that say? Each tier of the Killer Frost Infamy set benefits from burning enemies? What? Critical hit burning enemies. Apply Diablo Blaze or stay close to burning enemies to build stacks. Okay, stop. Flag on the play. The new character is Mrs. Freeze. The new equipment is based on an ice villain named Killer Frost. Why the fuck is all the new gear built on lighting people on fire? You stupid mother... How many developer brain cells have to die for the Ice Woman using ice guns to get buffs from using fire? There's an ice ailment already in the game, you dumbass! I know people get mad when you suggest this, but I've got to ask, does Rocksteady have an AI designing the new gear? The Killer Frost guns have ice crystals just floating out in space to where the models look unfinished, and I unlocked this nifty little buff for equipping Killer Frost and Reverse Flash gear at the same time. Gain 100% critical hit chance on burning enemies, but lose 10% shield for killing burning enemies with critical hits. So it's a buff that kills you if you actually use it. And that buff doesn't even really do anything. I also found a grenade that continually bleeds off your health for actually carrying grenades. I'm starting to think a dev is just so burnt out that they've begun adding crap that kills you on purpose just to see if any of their bosses notice. And nobody did. The Season of Freeze is structured exactly like the other expansions. You have a new Frozen Hearts level that starts out at 0, and you can challenge Brainiac when your new bullshit ranking gets up to 25. To increase that level, you play the expansion's new missions, with about 15 sets of air quotes around new missions, because they're all copy-pastes of the missions from the last expansion, and the one before that, and the base game before that. You can still pay $10 to get Mrs. Freeze early, but given that she only took us 3 hours to unlock, we were farming nothing but the survival mode, the fact that you can still pay money to get her early is just about the most desperate thing I've ever heard. There are a few genuine quality of life improvements with the new expansion, though. They finally added a stash that lets you store excess gear that's been clogging up your inventory, something that the dozen or so regular players have begged for since day one. And the gear in the new expansion is a marked improvement as we kept getting weapons that had legitimately good stats and effects. Through both halves of the Joker expansion, I got a whole 2 pieces of loot that were quasi-useful, but here, I damn near got an entire fresh loadout and a great build once we unlocked Freeze herself. This will lead to other problems down the line, given we're now entering the loop of perpetual power creep, but hey, They finally figured out that a game built around farming gear should maybe have gear that's worth farming. But every step forward was accompanied by a stumbling step backward. There are still no gizmo missions, penguin rescue missions, or terraforming missions. And now there's another casualty because there are no incubator missions anymore either. Yeah, the game up until now has had levels where you destroy a series of crystals to drop the shields around incubators to smash them. Those are gone now. Even more variety has been stripped out of a game that had none to spare. Basically, the only missions left are just run around killing shit. They have eliminated a mission type with literally every single expansion. At this rate, even if they finish their stupid-ass roadmap, there won't be any game left at the end of it. Please scrap the satellite missions next. They're obnoxious pains in the ass, and they force you to play 2 of them to unlock Mrs. Freeze's rescue mission. We finished the expansion in 2 play sessions, and our first session was bugged out the ass. Enemies were constantly popping and warping like crazy. My guns kept bugging out of ammo, and one bugged to quit picking up ammo altogether. Enemies would bug just to not take damage, or the new Green Lantern enemies would never spawn the constructs that you need to shoot. The game's servers are such a rolling shit show that it's a coin toss whether a play session for us will be playable or not. And I don't know why the servers are such hot garbage and bogged down. Nobody's using the damn things! The new incursion maps have a river of lava flowing through them, and if you get shot in the air and fall into the lava, you can get stuck somewhere that it's physically impossible to revive you. This is a game breaker bug that instantly fails you on a mission because you lose if a player can be revived and isn't. And it's a game breaker bug that hit us twice in one night.
Wait, are you both able to be revived?
I can be revived because I'm not in lava, but Schnick's kind of fucked.
Because, of course,
okay, so maybe
I got knocked out of the air, and I fell into the lava, and the game's just keeping me there.
Oh, and the game has a barely used mechanic called hit squads, where a group of elite enemies will ambush you if you clear certain conditions. A single hit squad is meant to kill you. And our first night, there were times that a new hit squad was dropping every few minutes. That had to have been a bug, right? Or between that and the new ice levels just constantly dropping rocks on your head out of nowhere perpetually without notice, is Rocksteady so desperate to shake up the gameplay that they just started hucking random bullshit at you all time that you're playing? I do appreciate that you unlock Mrs. Freeze before the Brainiac fight, allowing you to use the new character for the meaty content, such as it is, but take a look at this cutscene where Freeze joins the squad.
No matter the cost.
Good for them. Cute couple. You got strong and you got silent.
They couldn't animate the model taking off her helmet. And that's not the laziest that they got. Every character in the game has 2 victory animations for having the high score at the end of a mission. Freeze has 1, and she barely moves in it. And given how Freeze is presented as a strictly no-nonsense logical scientist with nothing but disdain for everybody except her wife, the emotes where she dances around with a dumb grin on her non-stop snarking during gameplay feel wildly awkward and out of character. It's almost like this character should have been Killer Frost all along so that everything would line up! Anyway, how does Mrs. Freeze play? Well, that's where things get interesting. Mrs. Freeze's traversal works exactly like Deadshot, just straight up flight and the ability to hover while shooting. But Mrs. Freeze can reset her traversal meter 3 times in a single flight, giving her way more airtime than Deadshot has. Check out this side-by-side comparison. Just typical for the man to finish way before the lady is done. It's like an Energizer Bunny commercial. Oh, and that's not all. Unlike Deadshot, Mrs. Freeze also has a fantastic melee attack, looking around a giant ice axe like she used to date Sub-Zero. And even just a decent piece of gear, she kills anything that's not a brute in one hit. And with a shield harvest and a suicide strike, even brutes can go down in mere seconds to a melee beatdown. Freeze can also run indefinitely on the ground without using traversal power, speeding up and smoothing out basic navigation with a simple action that only King Shark is able to do otherwise. The trade-off for Mrs. Freeze being good at everything is that there are 3 types of guns that are off limits when you're playing her, whereas other characters only have 2. Oh no! You mean I'll have to get by with nothing but assault rifles, pistols, and heavy weapons so that I still have options for any range or degree of accuracy? No, please don't! Yeah, we all agreed that just in terms of being fun to play, Mrs. Freeze is easily and by far the best character in the game. If only because she's good at stuff that's a tedious pain with all the other characters. After 5.5 months of crushing failure, Rocksteady finally realized, gee, maybe our game's one fundamental unique mechanic, the Traversal, shouldn't be insanely restrictive. Maybe melee combat should have an actual point to it. Just spitballing here. Queer die for the straight guy was short-lived, but we hereby dub our new all-freeze squad the Blizzard of Oz. Plus King Shark, because her voice actress Kelly Hugh is a major environmental activist for ocean life. And don't you worry, Miles still got stuck in the terrain even having switched to freeze. The dude is cursed at this point. And yeah, great as Freeze is, we all saw the parallels here, history repeating itself. I'm not one to beat a dead horse.
You shut up!
But when I took my final look at Marvel's Avengers, I observed that Jane Foster was a patched version of Thor, and Winter Soldier was a patched version of Captain America. Instead of actually adding to the game, the new content was meant to full-on replace the core game like a big-ass patch. Mrs. Freeze plays like Deadshot if Deadshot was better at everything. Suicide Squad is still stuck in the cycle of patching the core gameplay rather than adding anything of any substance. Or there's a simpler explanation for why the two play so similar. They're lazy. Also, it only took about 10 seconds for us all to get bored with Mrs. Freeze's all-gray, boring dishwater design. I very nearly bought a skin that makes her look like the Arkham City Mr. Freeze, until I saw that the Arkham skin is $10. For one costume of one character in one video game. $10. I paid half that for a used copy of Crimson Skies, a whole-ass actual fun video game. The Doomslayer costume for Mii Fighters in Smash Ultimate is $1.35 as an alternative to the dozens of skins you could use for free in the base game. You want $10 for one costume for a character that you dressed like garbage on purpose? Go to hell! Naturally, I gave my Mrs. Freeze a loadout of ice guns from the Killer Frost set, because if you're not going to give Mrs. Freeze a freeze gun, then what's the shittin' point? And even though I had 4 pieces of Killer Frost gear equipped at once, I did not get the equipment bonus. Wanna know why? Because the guns were Tier 1 and Tier 2, while the mods were Tier 3. And if the equipment is different tiers, it doesn't count. For some stupid-ass reason. Not that the set bonuses on this gear ever matter for shit anyways, the effects are so obscure as to never come into play. I'm just using these guns because they shoot normal and the numbers are good. I'm a man of simple taste. So with our elite all Mrs. Freeze team assembled, we went to go fight Brainiac. And it may just have been the single most miserable experience that we've had in the game up to this point. First, you have half an hour to complete 2 cannon missions in a row, and these missions take a while. The game doesn't spawn many enemies, killing enemies at range doesn't get you the Terminaut bits that you need to advance the stage, and the cannon starts firing out massive walls of damage, in addition to dumping so many beams on you from off-screen that we would legitimately have trouble telling what the hell was going on. Look at this shit! Seriously, every single time I've posted a look at this game, I've gotten comments that this action is an incomprehensible migraine. And if anything, it's getting worse. We barely made it to Brainiac with 2 minutes to spare. The new Brainiac alternates between copying Superman and copying the Flash, because yes, they are that bankrupt of ideas. Bet they're kicking themselves for building literally the entire endgame around fighting Brainiac 12 more times when they can't even code an original idea for one of those fights! No, instead, this one just swaps between recreating both of the worst boss fights in the game. As Superman, he whips around the field, only being open to shoot for a few seconds at a time, and as the Flash, he whips up massive near-instant kill tornadoes and invincibly runs around completely unmarked and too fast to land any hits. Brainiac spends most of the fight completely immune to everything. You have to meticulously track him yourself to spot the few second intervals where you can actually land damage, and the entire time he's flooding the stage with enemies and hurricanes to make tracking him that much harder. This fight alone took us a little over half a friggin' hour. The fight isn't even hard, because we were constantly healing and we could easily avoid his area effect attacks. He's just a cheating shitbag that can't be damaged for like 90% of the fight. That's not challenging, that's just wasting the player's time. Stalling because you don't know how to make video games! But at long last we killed Brainiac 4 out of 13. You know, even combining League members, you only have 3 Brainiacs left before you're stuck in a corner again. And we get the cutscene that everyone was eager for, rescuing the Flash.
Oh boy. Oh, wow. I'm not really used to getting winded. Hey, shouldn't you all be in there?
That was it. He just runs out, has 2 lines, and passes out. And then the cutscene of the squad taking him back to base is a series of 4 still frames. Is the bank about to foreclose on Rocksteady's offices or something? How bankrupt is the game's production at this point? There are no new enemies, no new missions, no new bosses, no new maps unless you count a shitty ice filter. The new character is mostly a reskin of a pre-existing one. The only actual new shit is the guns, and the one time where you're actually forced to make a new cutscene, you have to resort to a slideshow. Come on! And apparently when a League member is rescued, they're put inside a little plastic tube like an action figure being kept in mint condition. Yeah, that way we don't have to write and record interactions or animate them moving. And wait, there's a tube for Wonder Woman, who I'm pretty sure is the only League member that's dead for real. That's gonna be awkward. Outside of a player character that's mostly a reskin, the Season of Freeze continues to add nothing new to the game. They didn't even add a new status ailment like Poison and Punishment from the last 2 expansions. But now that there's a genuinely fun character to play, genuinely fun gear to farm, and they've made it official that they're undoing the game's garbage story, has Kill the Justice League finally been saved? No, it hasn't. To gather footage and to firm up my thoughts, I went back and I started playing the game solo as more Mrs. Freeze. And after an hour and a half, I was done. I had no problem shutting the game off to go back to Crimson Skies. You see, even with a character that I enjoyed, I still quickly hit a cap where I wasn't getting any actual rewards for playing. I once again hit the point where all the new gear drops were useless to me. My Mrs. Freeze is decked out in Tier 3 Killer Frost gear, equipped with a Gatling gun that shreds enemies at any distance, and a Parasite axe straight out of John Carpenter's The Thing that butchers everything. I played Mrs. Freeze until I maxed out her character level, and that was it. She's not going to get any stronger if I keep going. The Frozen Hearts rank doesn't do crap. The squad points improve your stats so slowly as to not do crap. And farming higher difficulties for the levels won't do crap. Even doing missions at mastery level 20, I'm not getting any gear that's worth the effort. I had more luck farming glitches than anything else. See, my solo run had the startup menu bug to keep repeating the seizure warning before hanging up on a black screen. Freeze's model glitched to carry 2 axes at once, and while I was filming the double axes, Captain Boomerang ran in front of me, bugged into the ground, and started dancing. Poor guy, he just wants attention. He is not taking it well that I have a new main. This is the problem with Kill the Justice League as a live service. There's no actual point to playing it. Not unless you bought a battle pass. Pay more money to make the game loop function properly. And unless they completely overhaul the game's progression systems, which they can't, that sheer lack of a point to anything that you do is never going to be fixed. Rocksteady has confirmed that Suicide Squad's support team has been decimated down to a skeleton crew, because the studio is moving on to actual games, pitching a new single-player game to Warner Brothers, and having been assigned to make a director's cut of Hogwarts Legacy.
Why is Hogwarts Legacy getting remade? It's not even 2 years old!
and the Steam player numbers are pretty consistently in the low triple digits, which is the equivalent of a flatline. But Rocksteady is still pressing forward and pretending that everything's fine. No, we're totally still going to get out 5 seasons of expansions across a whole year. We're going to finish that Brainiac story. There's no need to stop blowing way too much money on costumes and battle passes and bullshit. Please ignore all the leaking hulls pouring water into the ship. This thing could drop dead at any time, and it won't surprise me in the slightest when it does. But before I sign off, let's discuss the elephant in the room, that exposé. Jason Schreier, who you may recognize as the journalist who blew the lid off Anthem's troubled development, interviewed almost 24 Rocksteady employees who worked on Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League and wrote an article about his findings. Supposedly the big bombshell was that the live service nature of the game was Rocksteady's idea, but if you actually read the article yourself, they decided to make a live service game only after Warner Brothers sent shitloads of executives with multiple presentations about how live services are the only things worth making. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Remember, we hold your company's fate in our hands? So yeah, Rocksteady chose to make a live service. By jigsaw logic, Rocksteady ran into 2 key problems. The first being that they were woefully unprepared for a project of this scale. Arkham City and Arkham Knight were huge games, but both still pale and required manpower to an open-world online looter-shooter. Not only did they need to collaborate with a lot more studios, but they needed to hire a lot more staff. Staff that kept quitting when they found out they were making a live service. The second problem that Rocksteady ran into was, well, nobody knew how to make a live service. Rocksteady was flying by the seat of their pants through most of the game's development, at various points scrapping a melee combat system and heavily vehicle-based gameplay, before stumbling onto the safe and easy gunplay that we ended up with. Balancing 4 unique player characters was also a challenge, since the Arkham games only had you play as Batman, and 3 universally worse versions of Batman. And since the game's release date wasn't firmed up, engineers were perpetually panicked and focused on short-term fixes over long-term issues. Rocksteady co-founder Sefton Hill took ages to review work or make any design decisions because of the studio's high-quality standards, and because neither he nor co-founder Jamie Walker knew the first thing about live services. They also liked to pretend that everything was fine and the game would eventually just come together on its own, a mindset that the devs dubbed toxic positivity. Devs also pointed to the more philosophical issue that, well, they were used to making stories and content that you experience once, not designing missions that you might play multiple times a day, so they struggled coming up with a gameplay loop that wasn't monotonous and repetitive. And much like my previous episode on the Lord of the Rings Gollum, yeah, the whole team knew that the game was a piece of shit when it finally stumbled out onto stores. And before you mention them, nobody that Jason Schreier interviewed so much as mentioned the name Sweet Baby Incorporated. They did some grunt work filler writing on the audio logs and enemy chatter. They had 0 input on the story or game design, which are the game's actual problems. The entire development of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League just boils down to this. The wrong people with the wrong experience tried to make the wrong product at the wrong time for the wrong company. Another case of a publisher forcing a studio to go outside its wheelhouse to a disastrous misfire. Rocksteady's been frantically making this up on the fly, which probably explains the abysmal state of the Joker expansion. And at this point, the game's closure will be a mercy killing. Please, Warner Brothers, end it now before you replace Crisis on Infinite Earths as Kevin Conroy's final Batman performance. A scraped-together 6th expansion for a dead game will never be a 10th as poignant as this.
And if it has to end, at least I go out like this, being Batman.
Actually, now that I think about it, that'd be a funny way to end the game. You boot up the 4th expansion, and after 3 minutes, a wall of antimatter just comes rolling through and everything disintegrates. Well done! Most faithful DC adaptation ever made.
I know. You told me finding common ground with people builds relationships. I'm just not sure I want to explore what I have in common with these people.
Do I even still need to do this? I mean, they added nothing in this expansion. Like, am I supposed to just review a stack of new guns and a copied boss? This game's just in a holding pattern until it has permission to die. Why do I still need to keep doing these?
Deal Jado sent in another super chat. They said, got to go, new Suicide Squad expansion dropped, best of luck, Mentalgen.
Jado, you're the only person in the world that has ever said, hey guys, sorry can't be here, there's a brand new Suicide Squad expansion that I need to play. No, they're if you don't know, I'd recommend checking out their channel. They've been playing the game a lot, and trying to get into, not say it's good, but like show off, you know, what's wrong with the game and everything. It's been interesting.
Yeah, that's quite the feat to take on.
Yes, sir, Mr. Shane Rerez, sir.
So yeah, episode 4 of Suicide Squad's expansions came out a month ago. You may not have noticed because its shadow dropped out of nowhere with absolutely zero advertisements or announcement. I only found out there was a new expansion because viewers messaged it to me. These expansions are so useless that Rocksteady's given up even telling people that they exist. So what did the new expansion add to the game? Basically nothing. There are no new enemy types, no new mission types, not even a new status ailment like the first 2 episodes had. They added some new gear, and that's it. On the surface, at least, but we'll get to that later. Alright, there's a new Brainiac to fight, and to unlock the new boss, you need to play about 2 hours worth of the new missions, which are just old missions on a slightly reskinned map. The best progress in gear come from the multiverse incursions, to where it's pretty much completely pointless to do anything else. The incursion missions are a survival mode, a fight with Green Lantern brutes, a fight with a bunch of Flash goons, a fight with a random smattering of empowered goons, and oh wait, what the hell? There's an incubator mission and 2 poison ivy missions after they were missing from the last expansions? Did they actually put back in all the missions they removed to try and sell it as new content? Holy shit, I found a gizmo vehicle! I haven't seen one of these since the game's launch state! Wow, somebody remembered the one fun part of the game! I better jump out of it though, let Miles have a turn. The vehicle's flying off and Miles can't catch it. Sorry dude, I tried. Can we just stop and appreciate that the bar for this game is so low that putting crap that used to be in the game back into it is both refreshing and the best that they could do? Cheese and rice. So, Miles, Schnick, and myself cracked away at the same old missions. Again, the combat felt more sluggish this time around somehow, like enemies were taking more hits than usual to die. But the servers are so unstable, that could be a game bug. This is not the first time we've had enemies refuse to die for no adequately explained reason. Miles had to switch out his gear because he unlocked a synergy that killed him for using takedowns. That's a thing that happened. Sometimes your own gear kills you. Read it! Freaking read it! This grenade kills you for carrying grenades! The most noteworthy thing to occur in these levels was the survival mode erected these massive walls to where I was sealed off from the rest of the map. I mean, it's interesting. Annoying as balls, but it's something new, I guess. You know what else is new? These game bugs! Behold! The sideways tank! The invisible tank! A deposing bonus freeze on the results screen! Now I'm holding 3 axes! And last but not least, the Fart Cloud Axe! Seriously, my axe model despawned and I was left swinging around a fart cloud at the enemies, and it stayed that way for a long time! How does that even happen? The funny part is that this time around the bugs targeted different players than usual. I was the one who got stuck in the environment instead of Miles, and he was the one who got bugged weapons that emptied themselves, wouldn't pick up ammo, and wouldn't deal any damage. Like, I'm glad they know I'm not crazy, but we're 4 expansions in. How is this crap still happening? The entire time we played this expansion, we got unanimously shit gear all around. I don't think a single one of us got a single good piece of new equipment. Part of that's because these expansions still dole out garbage starter gear to serve as filler for no adequately explained reason, but another part is that, well, the game drops loot at random for 6 different characters. There are 6 different sets of melee weapons, and 6 different sets of mods, plus entire genres of weapons that characters can't use. My new main is Mrs. Freeze. The whole multiple hours that I played this new expansion, I didn't get a single master, infamous, or notorious melee weapon that would be anywhere near remotely useful. Almost all of the new Captain Cold guns that dropped, she couldn't equip. They added a ton of new goofy trickster-themed weapons for seemingly everyone except for Freeze. You play this looter-shooter that exists for you to get loot, and every time you grind another painfully dull mission for the 101st time, you have to roll the dice whether or not the equipment you get can even be used. Then roll the dice again whether the equipment has even halfway decent stats. And given the game's on a skeleton crew, it's entirely possible they didn't make new gear for your main in the first place. This game fundamentally does not understand its entire reason for being. And the most frustrating thing about all of this is we've gone backwards. Episode 3 of the expansions looked like the game was starting to make a rebound. We got gear that didn't suck to where we made entire new loadouts and a character that was actually fun to play. It looked like Rocksteady was starting to figure out why nobody likes this thing, and then the patch notes came and went, yeah, all that good stuff was a mistake. I'm not joking. The patch notes for episode 4 spell out that episode 3's survival mode was giving out progress too quickly, and they fixed it. They fixed the thing that was making the game better. So the decent progression and sped up loop drops that briefly made the game fun were a bug. It's Anthem's loot shower all over again. Time is a flat circle. The Brainiac fight is where it was really hammered home just how hosed this game is. The 5th Brainiac has a dialogue where he talks about using his mind and preying on the group's fears like it's setting up that he's going to imitate Batman. And then he just vanishes and you fight a horde of normal-ass henchmen. And after 4 or 5 waves, killing so ridiculously many enemies that you're certain there's no actual boss fight, you just fight Green Lantern again. No twists, no alterations. They just straight up copy Green Lantern. And why is that noteworthy? Because Rocksteady specifically announced that episode 4 would end with a fight against a Green Lantern Superman hybrid. This game is running so low on fumes that they had to scrap content and copy a boss just to have something to release on time. And once we finished the Brainiac fight to 0 cutscenes or dialogue, the game just disconnected Miles because it was just as sick of this crap as we were.
T-pose Harley. Okay, so we all got that. What just happened? Like it showed the victory screen and then it cut back to the loading screen.
I did not get that. I got 5 levels.
Server crash! I got a massive server crash.
On the bright side, I got promoted to squad leader because you got kicked out.
And
so is that going in the video?
There's
I think so.
2 dead shots now.
Yep, I think that. Yeah, that's
like
about it.
Seems like the most poignant ending we're gonna get with this thing.
Yeah.
To make sure that I was getting the full picture of the new expansion, I played past the Brainiac boss fight for a while on my own. As you play the missions, you unlock new mastery levels to keep juicing up the difficulty and unlock better rewards. So, I'll go farming for difficulties and loot drops. And then I stopped. Because the game broke. See, I tried a Poison Ivy level where you have to protect one of her plants from enemies, and I tried it on Mastery level 13. And if you think Mastery 13 sounds high, those patch notes said they rebalanced the Mastery levels to go over 500. But back on topic, playing the Ivy level on Mastery 13 It was laughably impossible to kill enemies quickly enough to save Ivy's plant. They spawn non-stop, they take way too much punishment, and your AI partners barely help you. Yeah, I'm starting to think they pulled out these Ivy incursions because they couldn't balance the damn things, and then they just put them back in, not realizing they hadn't been fixed yet. But whatever, maybe I'm just terrible at the Poison Ivy missions. Let's try another incursion. Let's do the mission where you just kill a bunch of enemies. That should be easy as pie. So I did the mission Ice Splice at Mastery Level 13, and for the very first time ever playing a mission in this game, I ran out of time! See, the incursion's time limit expired because the game kept spawning brutes that just would not fucking die! Luckily for me, it turns out that running out of time doesn't kill you. It just spawns a never-ending hellstorm of laser blasts 3 at a time to where the combat becomes a completely unimaginable cacophony of lights to where you can barely tell what the hell's going on! Yeah, try fighting 5 brutes at once while frickin' laser beams are being shoved up your ass every 2 seconds! Eventually, I beat that level, and I tried the mission where you fight Green Lantern brutes at Mastery Level 16. And again, I ran out of time because no matter how much I pounded on these guys, the shitheels refused to die. Am I going crazy here? I don't remember sucking this hard at the game. I failed 3 levels in a row at way lower difficulty than I usually play. What the hell am I doing wrong? To try and prove to myself that I'm not just going nuts, I went back to episode 3. I did episode 3's brute killing mission at Mastery Level 22, and I curb stomped all the enemies with time to spare. It wasn't my imagination. The exact same enemies, fought with the exact same loadout, on a higher difficulty, died way faster in episode 3 than in 4. You know what that means?
They nerfed the piss out of your characters, and they hoped you wouldn't notice.
Episode 4's enemies have at least triple the health that they had in previous expansions across the board. I don't know if this was an honest mistake in rebalancing the mastery levels, or if it's a deliberate underhanded strategy to drive grinding, but it doesn't matter. They made a game that's already on life support fundamentally worse, as if enemies dying too quickly was the one thing that was driving players away. I wonder if this has something to do with the fact that when we played the game on Labor Day weekend, Rocksteady was having a completely unannounced promotion where playing the game's 4 launch characters got you a damage buff and an XP boost. What was the end game there? Was that a tacit admission that the original 4 characters suck? Somebody please explain that! To prove my thesis that they buffed all the enemies, I went back to get careful side-by-side footage of combat from episodes 3 and 4. Here's me fighting a simple goon that spawns by the dozen. Here's me fighting a tank. And here's me fighting a brute. A Green Lantern brute to boot. Seriously, Rocksteady, eat shit. You took enemies that are already obnoxious pains in the ass to kill, and you gave them triple the friggin' health pool. Oh, and give them Green Lantern powers to where they keep turning invincible. Have a good time doing that. This one enemy is still not dead. Cheese and rice. And while I was on my mission gathering this footage, I encountered a brand new bug that friggin' defied all comprehension. The partner AI was disabled! No matter what I do, my AI partners outright refuse to move. Be it inside the overworld or during missions, they don't budge. And they especially don't move if you die and need to be revived and then fail the level!
Damn it all. The
Director Waller. Regarding my emergency proposal, codename Bizarro.
This can't be happening! Both in-game and out, things for Kill the Justice League just keep getting worse! Move! When we left off our coverage of the Episode 3 expansion, the news for Suicide Squad was bleak as it could be. Rocksteady had publicly confirmed that the game's support staff has been cut down to a skeleton crew, while the developer moved on to new single-player games. Games, plural. You'd think that would have been the game's death knell, but somehow things have still gotten worse. About a week after Episode 4 launched, Eurogamer reported that Rocksteady had to lay off a lot of their employees over the game's failure. Their QA department alone lost over half its people. And still, Warner Brothers admits in the Eurogamer article that work is continuing on the expansions regardless, even though, well...
Jado, you're the only person in the world that has ever said, hey guys, sorry can't be here. There's a brand new Suicide Squad expansion that I need to play.
This game is doing so badly that they had to fire shitloads of staff that they really couldn't afford to lose, and they're still working on it. Working on this game whose core player base is about 200 people. 500 if there's a new character. Somebody please make it make sense. You know, Sony released a new live service shooter game called Concord a little while ago that failed so catastrophically that it was shut down, delisted, recalled, and refunded after 2 weeks because it cost $400 million, took 8 years to make, had so much staff that the game's credits went over an hour long, and it released to a wet fart of nobody caring. And yeah, sure, Concord dying in 2 friggin' weeks is laughable, and existentially horrifying for all the staff involved, but Sony at least had some common sense. Sony knew not to keep wasting money on a game that was never going to rebound or turn a profit, so what the hell is Suicide Squad's excuse? There has to be a contract somewhere specifying that Suicide Squad is literally not allowed to die until the roadmap is complete. Maybe it's legal, like they have to finish the roadmap to get out of issuing refunds when the game kicks the bucket. Maybe it's in the voice actors' contracts that the story content they recorded in advance has to be released in an official capacity. Or hell, maybe Warner Brothers is mandating that they can't end the game until they finish de-screwing the Arkhamverse. You morons killed off all the heroes and we can't make sequels until you fix it! That is the only explanation for why Rocksteady keeps working on placeholder expansions for this albatross around the neck of their crumbling company. Let's be blunt here. This expansion was not tested. Entire levels blatantly do not work. It is obviously made entirely out of copy-pasted content. Rocksteady had to bail on announced content to get it out the door, and they made absolutely zero attempt to hide how phoned in the expansion was. They don't care anymore. They don't care that the game is trash. They don't care that nobody's playing. They don't care that everyone can see it falling apart in public. They don't even care that the game is literally killing them. This game is continuing no matter what, because it is a matter of personal pride and spite that this game refuses to die. That is my takeaway from this expansion. Rocksteady is in a holding pattern, doing the absolute bare minimum to push out all the content they announced, and it will keep falling apart, it will keep recycling content, and it will keep humiliating and siphoning the life out of Rocksteady. This isn't funny anymore, it's pathetic. Pathetic that a once great studio got locked into this death spiral for the long haul and nobody can stop it. Rocksteady, bros, I implore you, I am trying to help you here. Dump all the content you have finished at once. Claim all the Brainiacs fused into one, or hell, just have us fight all 8 of them at once. That could be cool. This torture ends when you say it ends. The game's only fate is oblivion. The least it can do is greet it with dignity.
You You know, I'm kind of glad that we're nearing the end of Suicide Squad's roadmap of expansions. It'll free up my time to talk about the other crappy games on my backlog. I've got a dumb elevator shooter for the Wii, more Kinect garbage, an atrocious horror game donated to me by my friends who also want me to play War for Cybertron. Instead, I'm here talking about the same game for the 5th time, and it's not even going to be the... Oh crap, this is the 6th time! I lost count!
We're actually covering 2 expansions for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League because Rocksteady have managed to crap 2 new episodes since we last checked in 2 months ago. Episode 5, Thieves, and Episode 6, Scoundrels, which combined to form Season 3, The Season of Lawless, aka How is this game not dead yet? Season 3 begins with a cutscene of Zoe Lawton, Deadshot's daughter, who has apparently become a live-streaming thief and social media-obsessed influencer because that's just modern writing shorthand for young people. Zoe dubs herself Lawless and heads to Metropolis to help fight Brainiac, but she gets stuck trying to save Green Lantern and the squad has to save them both. And of course, you do this by grinding the so-called new missions until an arbitrary rank is high enough to go fight another Brainiac. Yippee! As before, the only missions that earn you halfway decent gear and progression are the incursions, which, this season, consist of a survival mode, 2 canon missions, 2 fights against random minions, and 2 fights against brutes. Yeah, the mission types remain stripped to the bone, but there is actually something new to talk about there. After months of cheaply reskinning the same generic city maps, Season 3's incursions actually take place on some new levels, specifically levels meant to look like major locations from the Batman Arkham games. Several incursions use an environment that's basically the overworld from Arkham Asylum, with other environments looking like major locales from Arkham City and Arkham Knight. It wouldn't at all surprise me if these environments were just ganked straight out of those games to save time and money, but son of a bitch, it is such a relief to finally have some new-ish levels for something different. One of the levels even takes place on a series of floating islands. That's the freshest thing to happen since they ditched the Gizmo cars. Although it is all grimly ironic and maybe a little depressing that Rocksteady is literally cannibalizing their own legacy to try and prop up the game that's killing them. Oy. Aside from the new maps, the actual gameplay of Episode 5 is unremarkable. The enemies are back to normal after Episode 4 inexplicably buffed everyone but you with triple the health as normal. It felt like we were getting less XP than usual, but I have no hard data to confirm or deny that. I got a Catwoman minigun with good damage output. The rest of the gear seemed meh. We're 5 expansions in with tons of sets of gear giving special bonuses for particular loadouts, and it still feels like it doesn't matter what gear you equip apart from the numbers. Gear set bonuses still feel like passive buffs with such specific activation requirements that you never notice them actually doing anything. I'm keeping Mrs. Freeze with a Killer Frost set bonus, mainly just to keep on theme at this point. I listened back to our 3.5-hour game session, and I had exactly 3 takeaways regarding Episode 5. For one, the game has a strange habit of dumping tons of hit squads on you in a row, which is such a half-baked mechanic that it barely even matters aside from boxing you in. 2, the game is still dropping rocks and icicles on your head every 10 seconds just to be a shit. And 3, enough of the damned lava already, you cheap shitbag morons! This has been a thing for multiple expansions now, but incursion maps have rivers of lava that kill you instantly, cranked up to 11 in these Arkham missions, where you can also fall off the map chunks into an endless void. That doesn't sound like a problem, but here's the thing. Enemies knock you back all the friggin' time. The entire game is built around flight traversal and loaded down with snipers that disable that flight, which sends you plummeting helplessly down into lava and bits. And that's on top of enemies that just knock you out of the sky into more lava. And do you see what I'm getting at here? Enemies just flat-ass huck you into the lava non-friggin' stop for cheap instant kills, and there is nothing you can do about it. And between that and rocks and stalactites raining down from the sky every few seconds at all times, the game becomes an endless cacophony of cheap, annoying damage that never freaking ends. It seriously feels like Rocksteady's best idea to spice up the combat was just to huck random bullshit at you nonstop and hope that does something. The game will even clip through walls to drop you into lava because you weren't dying fast enough. The thing that blew our minds, though, is that unlike the Joker and Freeze expansions, Lawless adds actual story content. You have to play 3 specific levels before you're allowed to challenge the new Brainiac, and at the beginning of each level, you get an actual cutscene. Yeah, Lawless gets on camera, the game follows her breaking into Brainiac's ship and rescuing Green Lantern and needing cover on her way out, complete with you being locked down to a walking speed while the cutscenes play out. New maps and actual story content. I'm starting to think that Joker and Freeze's expansions were phoned in on purpose, while the whole dev team's focus was on Part 5. Also, let's not bury the lead here. Can somebody explain to me why you rescue Green Lantern in an expansion that's themed on the most famous and beloved Batman games ever made? There's even a cutscene where Green Lantern gets free, but the squad dicks around until GL falls off a cliff and drops into a portal into an unknown other dimension, so we can save him in Part 2. They finally realize that the second half of the season should probably have an actual point. Although there is a slight problem with the Green Lantern cutscene. Setting aside that he shouldn't have his costume if he's missing his ring, why is the real Green Lantern still all zombified and veiny like his brainwashed clone? Wait, I think he even still has a bullet hole in his head! So, did we kill clones and we're rescuing the real Leaguers, or did we kill the real Leaguers and they just didn't die when we shot them? I'm not sure they ever answered that basic question of what's going on in the story. This is how you can tell that most of this expansion was finished in advance. They had new levels and new story cutscenes, but no time, money, or manpower for a living Green Lantern! The Brainiac fight is a hybrid of Green Lantern and Superman. When he's Green Lantern, he perpetually hides behind an everything-proof shield, and when he's Superman, we'd shred his health bar like it was made of Kleenex. Man of Steel, my ass! This is the fight that had to be scrapped from episode 4, by the way, directly copying pre-existing bosses, and it still doesn't seem to work right. And then you rescue Lawless, and as is tradition, we get a cutscene of her joining the Suicide Squad.
Have you ever even seen the bomb in your heads? Y'all are the ones who let a shady government agency strip you entirely of your rights. You let them inject you with a thing you didn't understand. And you ran headfirst into literally an apocalyptic war zone.
I thought it was the best way to see you again. These fools.
Dad! Please. This is important. Okay, your bodily autonomy, right? I mean, what is even keeping you here? What's the Wi-Fi password? General Boy Scout?
Wow, that was physically painful to watch.
Lawless is introduced shit-talking the entire squad like they're the dumbest bastards on the face of the earth for trying to save the planet, mocks Waller's tactics as if to imply that she knows better than the highly trained Black Ops Commando unit, thinks it's the squad's own fault that Waller is blackmailing them with brain explosives, throws in multiple thinly veiled jabs at vaccines. She wants to fight Brainiac because it would be like so totally cool, and she gets off on throwing around the word colonizer.
Brainiac's been doing this mega colonizing shtick. How many people get to say that they robbed an alien colonizer?
Colonizer shit.
The only squad members that are against her joining are Captain Boomerang, long established as the moron nobody should ever listen to, and Deadshot, who's apparently not allowed an opinion on anything because he's an absentee dad. And then both Waller and Flag, in dialogue exchanges afterward, unanimously treat Lawless as the only intelligent or competent member of the team.
Teach these idiots how to really get under Brainiac's skin. Would you, Lawless?
With Lawless lamenting more than once that everything would go so much better if they just did everything that she said. Rocksteady, were you trying to make Lawless as unlikable as possible? This is a teenage thief whose only job is being a social media influencer. She's got less subscribers than I do. And she's marching into a full-blown alien invasion to order trained soldiers and generals what to do. And the entire game treats her as being 100% in the right for doing so. Oh yes, Teeny Bopper, tell us how to save billions of people from a technologically advanced interdimensional warmonger. Your Twitter subs will surely turn the tide in this war. Let me put it this way. If the Avengers were battling Thanos and Captain Marvel showed up to offer help and battle strategy, you would say, yes, please. She's strong. She's got decades of experience. She has mastery of intense power. She knows what she's doing. But if Cassie Lang, who's barely ever been in a fight or ever used her powers, tried the exact same thing while calling the Avengers morons, you would want to punch the stupid bitch. Even her interview audio logs are insufferable. Flag and Waller make a huge deal about how super smart she is. Waller raves about how Lawless will be as big and important as her one day. And when Lawless refuses to answer any questions with a head up her ass, well, how do you define that deflection? Everyone just reacts like she's way too smart for any of them to hope to interrogate her. How in the hell did this moron make the cut for DLC? Here's the thing, while Zoe Lawton has been a minor DC Comics character tied to Deadshot for a long time, there is no DC character called Lawless. Not unless you count a World War II soldier who was a minor character from a single comic in 1989. For all intents and purposes, Lawless is an original character created exclusively for the game, which explains a whole lot about this expansion. Lawless was obviously intended to be the game's breakout character, the star that's so popular that they migrate to the comics and cement a lasting legacy for the source material, like how Batman the Animated Series invented Harley Quinn and the modern Mr. Freeze, or how the only reason anyone remembers Marvel's Ultimate line is because it created Miles Morales. Episode 5 appears to be the expansion where all the dev team's post-launch effort went because they wanted Lawless to be as big a deal as possible. That's why she gets multiple cutscenes of build-up. That's why the entire game stops to gush over how she's the single most important member of the team. You're supposed to be super impressed so that Lawless makes the jump to comics and shows and everywhere else. The key that Rocksteady didn't understand, however, is that breakout characters are usually made on accident. Harley was only invented so Joker could have a more prominent goon for one episode, and Miles Morales was only made because Marvel wanted to reboot a Spider-Man book. They weren't designed to be popular. They became popular because they were made to tell stories that turned out good. So when you go the Lawless route of openly shitting on everybody to scream, "Look how awesome she is! Don't you want this character to appear everywhere?" That is a one-way ticket to history's trash bin because it's obnoxious and annoying. Made worse by the fact that Lawless herself is immensely obnoxious and annoying!
I gotta let this tech recharge before I look bad on stream.
Yeah, so how does Lawless play? I'll put it this way. We all switched back to our old mains the second that episode 5 was over. Lawless's shtick is that she uses stolen Brainiac technology that kind of lets her control gravity, so her Traversal is an anti-gravity machine, and her melee attack is a gun that fires slow motion. For Traversal, Lawless floats around while tumbling like she can barely control it and should be puking her guts out. It feels slow, it's incredibly slippery to control, like it takes forever to change direction in midair. She can't run, and there aren't any upgrades to increase your air time, so she can barely recharge her flight meter. In my time using Lawless, it seemed like she had a really hard time harvesting shields, which means you have to make do with perpetually low health, and as a result, it felt like she could barely fight brutes. She kinda almost gets a few passive buffs from using the Electrify ailment. They don't really seem to do anything. Her Traversal move also barely seems to hit any enemies in exchange for a skill that recharges the useless attack slightly faster. I wonder if Lawless was meant to be played as a support class, because kinda sorta stunning enemies with her melee hits appears to be the only thing she's good for. I mean, sure, she can button mash melee through groups of the basic soldiers, but friggin' any character can do that. Honestly, I think the only reason that there were a few times that Lawless kinda seemed halfway good is that Rocksteady gives her a hacked gun when you unlock her. I'm not even joking here. When Miles and I got Lawless, she was inexplicably carrying a sniper rifle that has roughly triple the damage output of any other weapon in the game. Or at least any other weapons that I've got. And Schnick got a hacked pistol that was the same way. He gave it to Deadshot. They were so desperate to push this character, they actually hacked the weapon loadouts for her. Probably as a last-second patch. So yeah, pretty quickly I went back to Mrs. Freeze, Schnick went back to Deadshot, and Miles, the only one of us who could stand Lawless, went back to Harley and promptly got stuck in. God damn it, Captain Boomerang, you screw up everything! To prep for this video, I played episode 5 alone for about an hour and a half. Got bored off my ass. Turns out that a few new maps don't change the fact that you're still playing the same handful of identical missions, in the vain hope that the game drops some gear that's even remotely useful.
I only got 2 items, an assault rifle that sucks monkey butt, scrap that, and a shield mod that sucks monkey butt.
I got an SMG from Catwoman.
Does it suck monkey butt?
Yep. Actually, it's actually worse than my Two-Face SMG, by the way.
I got a shield that sucks monkey butt. And I got a sniper rifle that sucks monkey butt.
A lot of monkey butts getting sucked tonight, damn.
I think I have definitive proof that Rocksteady watches my videos, though. In my coverage of episode 4, I called out a bug to where the AIs are prone to just sitting on ass doing nothing and leaving you to die. And even when they work, they barely help you. Well, now all of the AI partners teleport next to you non-friggin' stop to prevent that very thing from happening. And they'll even teleport across the map to take out snipers for you, if this clip is any indication. Except now it's actually kind of annoying because they were constantly kill-stealing, getting in my way, and at times just about playing the game for me. Like I would try to go shield harvest a brute only to find that King Shark was already in the middle of a long-ass execution animation. I can kill stuff myself, you overzealous bitches! I decided to close out my exploration by playing the hardcore survival mode with Mrs. Freeze. I played for a little over 20 minutes, completely made the mode my bitch to where I was never even close to dying, and then I got shot with one of those beams that disables traversal and fell down a bottomless pit with zero chance to save myself. Apparently the hardcore mode means you lose for dying once, so I failed the mission and got screwed out of rewards. Yeah, turns out the huge Arkham map where multiple arenas are floating in an insta-kill void really sucks balls for a survival mode. I kept running out of enemies to kill and had to scour the map trying to guess where the hell they all spawned. And then the navigation that the game forces on you can arbitrarily kill you at any time. I think we're done here. Episode 5 of the expansions added some story content and a few new maps to at least feel different. But that feeling only lasts an hour or so before it hits you that you're still just playing the same game. Only now you can use a terrible character that you can't stand. Another character for the game to drop loot for so that you get useless rewards. This is the expansion where the bulk of the developers' efforts went. And that's just kind of sad.
Yeah,
You were saying.
I just saw Jado dancing here, so I wanted to join.
I'd say that was the last thing. That was the thing I wanted to do.
Okay, let's do that then.
Before you start singing, can I just say I like how Harley's watching from the shadows and she just looks bored.
honestly, you need to use that clip in the eventual video after Walking Dead is done. And now she walks away.
Yeah, I'll clip that.
She's had enough of this. She's like,
because it's like here we are trying to have fun, and Harley Quinn's like, I'm bored.
The second half of the season, episode 6, Scoundrels, dropped with no announcement whatsoever around November 5th, and if you think that's bad, you ain't seen nothing yet. It opens with a cutscene showing how Lawless is fitting in with the squad, and to my bewilderment, she says that she wasn't planning on joining the Suicide Squad. Yeah, she didn't mean to join, she just marched right into their active war zone, inserted herself into their mission, and then walked straight into their base to directly ask to join! And then she says she doesn't even know why she's here.
What am I really gonna do here? Am I getting dirt on Argus to hold them accountable once this is all over? Am I being where I'm needed? Am I just going to go? For now, It's just vibes.
Oh, we all know why you're here, Zoe. Fighting colonizers is obviously your wet dream come true because you were written by people whose entire knowledge of African American youth comes from watching the Black Panther movie. It's like they realized that they pushed too hard in part 1 and tried to fix it by just making her stupid. Anyway, this expansion added nothing, and I mean even less nothing than usual. All of the gear drops are items from the base game and the first 2 expansions. They just have a tier 4 label slapped onto them. That doesn't mean jack shit. Seriously, side-by-side comparison. Tiers don't mean a damn thing. Like, every expansion prior to this at least added some new gear, and now they can't even do that. We reached the new Brainiac in an hour and a half, and he's a direct copy-paste of Superman. And they couldn't even reuse a boss correctly. In the base game, Superman takes damage really slowly until you land counters to build up gold kryptonite so that he takes damage faster. The Season 6 Brainiac does that too, but he also has much less health by default. So if you land a few counters, your weapons rip him to shreds and the fight only takes a few minutes. Whoops. There are 6 quote-unquote new incursions on another map made of shredded and reused Arkham maps, 1 fight with brutes, 4 fights with basic enemies, and a single of those annoying watchtower missions. That's it! The only vaguely noteworthy content here is a fight with Batman-infused enemies in Arkham Asylum's Batcave, which sounds cool until you realize it's friggin' nothing but invisible snipers and brutes that explode. An entire fight of trying to find enough enemies while getting bitch slapped by cheap shots. Oh, and I wanted to give the game devs credit for having to alter the maps to add lava and shit. This Batcave map made me realize they just took the Arkham maps and replaced all the water with lava. I think the rest of these locales are pulled from Arkham Knight, the entry I've played the least, so I didn't even recognize most of them. They're totally going to reuse these Arkham maps for Season 4 when we rescue the Batman, aren't they? They can't afford any more weapons or gear. I highly doubt they'll scrape together the funds to make a new map for us. The survival mode for Episode 6 takes place on a massive map of reconstituted Arkham environments floating in a void where the enemies only spawn in one location at a time, and you have to keep stopping to look for where the damn game is happening. And one of the islands where enemies can spawn is so freaking high up in the air that none of the base game characters can reach it. This mode appears to be literally impossible unless you're using a DLC character. Crap in a hat! The one thing at bare minimum that we were expecting was a cutscene of rescuing Green Lantern. Last we saw of him, he was falling into a portal to an unknown dimension, so clearly we still have to track him down and complete the rescue. Obviously, we'll save Green Lantern when we defeat the new Brainiac. Of course not. You kill Brainiac and it just dumps you back at headquarters again. So, on a pure guess, I had our group check the back of the Hall of Justice where the Flash is recuperating, and you're never gonna believe this. Sure enough, Green Lantern is there for absolutely no reason.
Let me see. I see the. Wait, he's there! He's there!
What?
He is there!
So there's no cutscene for. There's no cutscene of us rescuing him?
He just magically poofed. We don't know how he got here, but he's here.
Oh my fucking god.
That is
pathetic.
That is unacceptable.
This game keeps finding ways to amaze everybody.
There isn't so much as a single line of dialogue to let you know that he's back there. In fact, I looked it up. You actually get GL at some point in episode 5. We just didn't know to check. How do you screw up that badly? I think it's safe to say that we're finally seeing the effects of Rocksteady's layoffs and the game's support team being cut to the bone. Everything that wasn't finished months in advance has to be hurriedly repurposed from old expansions and old games, or just left out entirely.
And if you're thinking that these expansions are bare bones because they were focused on bug fixes, no. The first thing, literally the first thing that happened was the main menu glitched to where Schnick and myself were trapped on a screen that tried to load the episode introduction and the squad loadout at the same time. Miles had nonstop problems with his guns dumping out all of his ammo. Miles experienced rampant lag that may or may not have crippled his voice chat. You have to take down 2 cannons to reach Brainiac in episode 5, and the stupid-ass game can't even make sure to spawn enough enemies to make the level playable. For virtually all of episode 6, we were glitched to where we couldn't use special attacks. Miles and I couldn't use traversal moves, and Schnick couldn't do the suicide strike. When we tried the episode 6 survival mode, we had all the enemies glitch at once to be stuck in the ground. Schnick got thrown into and stuck in a damn tree. Episode 5 was pretty stable, not surprising given that it's clearly where the most development went, and I can only assume we'd have seen more episode 6 glitches if it weren't shorter than 2 hours. It's pretty clear at this point that Rocksteady had most of the characters, audio, and etc. for these expansions recorded long in advance, and there's some kind of contract dictating that it all has to be released. So the Deathstroke expansion where you rescue Batman is pretty much assured to come out. How phoned in it is another story. But my question is, what happens after that? Rocksteady's roadmap accounted for 4 seasons of DLC, and then they were going to talk about setting up a new story after Brainiac was done. Oh god, they actually thought this crap was going to continue. Deathstroke's in the can, sure, but another season is still going to leave us with 4 living Brainiacs, 1 missing Superman, 1 dead Wonder Woman, and 1 thoroughly fucked Arkham universe. The stuff that's been confirmed to release doesn't include an actual ending, and if episode 6 is any indication, we're way past having no gas in the tank. We're even out of fumes at this point. There hasn't been a new mission or enemy type since episode 2. They can't afford new weapon models anymore. They have to ransack their other games for new maps. They can't afford critical cutscenes or even dialogue. And all this is after Rescuing the Flash was relegated to a series of still shots. They can't even afford a non-zombified Green Lantern model when they already had one in the game's extras. Unless they made more progress on an ending before release than we know about, I don't see how this ends any other way than a text wall or a comic book tie-in. At this point, I think we'd be lucky to get an animation like they use for introducing new episodes. This game is not going to end, it's just gonna stop. And mark my words, that fat lady is warming up.
I feel like with how shitty this game is, one of you should like a shit song from Conker's Bad Fur Day.
I am the great mighty Pooh, and I'm going to throw my shit at you. A huge supply of tears come from my chocolate starfish. How about some scat, you little twat?
Friends, family, people who hate my stupid face, we are gathered here today to mourn a tragic loss. One who was taken from us far too soon, yet simultaneously not soon enough. One who brought friends together and crumbled beloved companies to dust. We are here to mourn the passing of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. But as they say, do not mourn because it is over. Mourn because it happened in the first place. Yes, it's true. Rocksteady has officially announced that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League will not be getting any further content updates. This 4th season of expansions, consisting of Episode 7 Control and Episode 8 Balance, is to be the final expansion that the game will ever see. Sad, really. Live services are planned to span years, yet this one died just short of its 1-year anniversary. And I just know the question that you're all dying to ask, did the game have an actual ending? Doubtful, considering that we've got 6 Brainiacs left to kill, and Rocksteady was so bankrupt of ideas, budget, and manpower that the Lawless expansion was missing cutscenes, and Episode 6 didn't even have new gear. Well, I'm not going to give away the presents early. We have to start with Episode 7, because damn it, I'm a professional, and any job that's worth doing is worth doing right. Episode 7's opening cutscene introduces our final squad member, Deathstroke, who's already been recruited to the squad by Amanda Waller and has been working with her for years. There's been some confusion on this point. The game only makes oblique reference to Arkham Knight, and near as I can tell, no reference at all to Arkham Origins, so the latter's post-credit stinger was still completely pointless, and Origins is still exiled from the continuity. Which is laughable now that Rocksteady's wiped their ass with said continuity. Also, gotta love how they gave up on the multiversal variant ideas after 2 characters. I'm pretty sure that Janker and Mrs. Freeze only exist because Arkhamverse Joker and Freeze had send-offs in Arkham Knight and they needed replacements. The cutscene also says that Deathstroke has been fighting Brainiac on his own from behind the scenes, and he's killed 2 Brainiacs by himself!
Figured out how to travel between Earths. Killed a few Brainiacs.
I'm not joking. Rocksteady got so desperate that 2 Brainiacs just died off-screen. Starting to dread what the ending is going to look like. Also, yes, Deathstroke, a villain that Arkham Batman has soloed twice in these games, in turn soloed 2 different Brainiacs, the same Brainiacs that have conquered entire universes and took down the League with no resistance. How does any of that even begin to work?
Power levels are bullshit!
Like, fans have been joking for a year now that we're fighting the wussiest Brainiacs to ever exist, but seriously, the squad should not stand any remote chance against this asshole, let alone Deathstroke working on his own, let alone enough of a chance to kill him 13 times! But whatever, Deathstroke is stranded on a medieval Elseworld, and the squad has to save him. If you followed the other expansions, then you already know how this goes. To unlock Deathstroke, you fight Brainiac, only you can't fight Brainiac unless your episode rank is high enough, and to raise that episode rank, you play the incursion missions where you warp to a new map. The incursions in this expansion take place on a medieval-inspired level of castles and big green fields. The game claims that this was done as a really weak tie-in to a DC Comics event, except we theorized a more cynical explanation for the new maps.
If you want me to make a guess where they stole the assets from, I'm gonna guess either Middle-earth Shadow of War or Hogwarts Legacy.
Oh my god! I did not think of that. This environment is definitely ripped straight out of Shadow of War. Like, this looks like one of the fortresses you have to assault for that god-awful end game. Schnick, I think you hit the nail on the head.
I think you hit the death on the stroke.
I have absolutely zero proof to confirm this, but we're guessing these maps are repurposed assets from the Middle-earth games, which are also published by Warner Brothers. Why not? The Lawless expansion was entirely made of repurposed Batman Arkham maps. The art style of these medieval levels doesn't really feel like it gels with the art direction of the rest of the game, and these maps are so friggin' huge that you can tell they were not designed for the missions you run inside them. But, oh white, they threw up a few Superman banners. Now it's totally not an asset flip. Okay, time to grind away at the 6 new incursions. The first one is a mission where you fight a horde of basic enemies. Yep, just pretty expected. Next is the incursion where you fight a horde of basic enemies. Grand. Next is the incursion where you fight a horde of basic enemies. Uh-oh. Then there's an incursion where you fight a horde of basic enemies. Fifth up is an incursion where you fight a horde of basic enemies. And then there's the last incursion where you fight a horde of basic enemies. And the obligatory survival mode where you fight a horde of basic enemies. Wow. I'm honestly kind of impressed. They completely gave up. They stripped out all of the missions except for basic combat against some randomly selected enemies. No more cannons or incubators or Toyman truck missions or even those garbage satellite missions. They got so desperate to shove this out the door that there's nothing to do anymore. Well, I hope that somebody picks up that phone, because I called it! They have eliminated a mission type with literally every single expansion. At this rate, even if they finish their stupid-ass roadmap, there won't be any game left at the end of it! And of course, the loot is hot garbage. The bonuses you get for using specific villain loadouts are still so oblique as to never come into play. You still pick gear based on numbers and virtually nothing else. I found a good full-auto sniper rifle to give Deathstroke for when we unlocked him, and that's pretty much it. And I didn't even need the expansion to get a sniper rifle that works that exact same way. And yeah, we played episode 7 the night that it went live, and the expansion was a rolling shit show. Bit by bit, we'd notice our controls getting laggier, we'd shoot enemies and nothing would happen. We'd have to clear levels by just hoping that the enemies would eventually decide they'd taken damage, and it would just get worse and worse until we had a full-on server crash, which happened twice in one night. For our final glitch roundup on this pathetic albatross of a game, we present entire hordes of enemies forgetting to move! A bugged out windscreen! A brute who got stuck in a wall for so long that he ended up scaling this huge tower over the course of several minutes! Green Lantern mines that wouldn't explode when shot! My attempt to recover from a long throw resulted into myself phasing inside of a wall! The camera attempting a seizure procedure! A shield crystal that bugged to be invulnerable! Harley dying without really dying! Harley stuck in the floor! A game crash! Schnick's bullets glitching not to work while the melee still worked fine, so it wasn't a damage bug! Deathstroke phasing into a cart! And Deathstroke frozen into a position where he looks like he's trying to poop. And yes, even here at the end, Miles as Harley is still getting stuck in the environment. A lot. Like, a lot. Like, Miles sent me clips of all his bugs, and it was just clip after clip of Harley getting stuck inside things! The bugginess all culminated with episode 7's Brainiac boss fight, which soft-locked on us to where it was physically impossible to complete. Yeah, the boss opens with a battle against more basic enemies, because Lord knows you haven't had enough of that yet, and at some point the enemies just stopped spawning and left us stuck. We were confused as hell trying to figure out what we did wrong, only to realize the game had broken again. And when we reconvened that weekend to take down this Brainiac, well, this is what happened. First of all, the dude suddenly doesn't taunt you in a cutscene before the fight starts, but once you clear out a few waves of goons,
What? You listened to his speeches?
Brainiac dies in a cutscene! There is no boss battle! And then, Deathstroke doesn't even get a cutscene of him joining the squad like everybody else has gotten. He's just chilling in the bullpen with everybody else out of nowhere. I cannot believe how bad this expansion was. They took out everything! No missions, no boss, missing cutscenes, and the servers were held together with scotch tape and prayers! This is the developer that brought us Batman Arkham Asylum, for fuck's sake! It is pathetic how far they've fallen! So, how does Deathstroke, our fourth and final DLC character, actually play after suffering that train wreck to acquire him? Well, that's the funny part. Deathstroke is the most brokenly overpowered character in the game by a pretty vast margin. Seriously, let's just go through a few of the items on Deathstroke's upgrade tree. 10% damage buff for every nearby enemy. 10% damage buff for every second spent airborne. At 30 combo or higher, you get a 200% damage buff. At 40 combo and higher, you get another 150% damage buff, plus enemy shields and armor just don't matter anymore. Super attacks fully overcharge your shield. You get an extra life that recharges after 2 minutes. Not that I ever came close to using it. 2 extra grenades regardless of your loadout. Kills with critical hits immediately reload your gun. And if you ever do decide that you need to reload manually, it will immediately refill half the meters for both super attacks. The squad ultimate gives you unlimited ammo and another 100% boost of firearm damage. And that's not to mention all the upgrades that make enemies bleed, and then you get a 150% damage buff on bleeding enemies. Holy shit! To put this in context, Mrs. Freeze is easily the second most powerful character in the game, and all she gets is some healing, some tiny meter charges for freezing enemies, and 1 melee multiplier at a time. Deathstroke, meanwhile, gets multiple stacking damage buffs to where everything dies in 1 hit! Look at how quickly the dude can take down armored brutes single-handed! Deathstroke's upgrades are so coked out his eyes that Rocksteady has to have been trolling the game on purpose! It doesn't end there, by the way. Deathstroke's Traversal has him throw a teleporter gadget, a lot like Captain Boomerang, except Deathstroke is a lot faster and snappier to control. He can also speed run in midair to recharge Traversal, hover for a long friggin' time while shooting enemies, and speed run infinitely while on the ground, meaning he's probably the best handling character in the game on top of being busted. And by the way, there is zero explanation for why Deathstroke can fly and super run. It's hand-waved away with some kind of spiritual meditation bullcrap. He just runs on Dragon Ball logic now, where humans can fly if they try hard enough. So just to run down the DLC characters for a second, we've got Janker the Gay Blade, who's average and unremarkable, Blue Muscle Mommy, who's better than everyone at everything, Shut Up Zoomer, who sucks at everything to the point you wonder why she's even here, and only actual recognizable DC character Deathstroke, who's broken to high holy hell. The fact that all 4 new characters are wildly varying tiers of usefulness is just the period at the end of the sentence that Rocksteady had no idea what they were doing. Suicide Squad did get a large influx of players in the months leading up to its final demise, but it wasn't because of hype or any kind of word of mouth regarding the support. It was because the game's Ultimate Deluxe Edition kept going on sale for $5. If that. In the lead up to the game's final expansion, Kill the Justice League was added as a free title for PlayStation Plus subscribers. Warner Brothers got so desperate or so devoid of shits to give that they're literally giving the game away for free now. Anything to get players into the ecosystem so they can start buying worthless battle passes and garbage costumes. There are about 4 different packs to dress the squad as the Justice League in different ways now, because apparently cardboard costumes is a joke that never gets old. Oh, but it gets better. Upon signing in to the final expansion, Schnick, Miles, and myself all found that we had spontaneously been given over 50 upgrade points for completely free. There was no explanation. That is because Rocksteady sped up the grind for skill points in yet another bid to try and retain a few players, and the stacks of points we got were essentially back pay, as if the speed up had always been in place. Congratulations, Rocksteady! You finally implemented a basic quality of life improvement that you should have done about 8 months ago when it might have made a difference! Yeah, desperation is definitely the name of the game, considering that Rocksteady's doing so poorly that they announced another round of layoffs during the holidays. That's just cold. And that's coming from a Mrs. Freeze main. Well, we finally reached the end of the road. It's time for the final episode of DLC, Episode 8, Balance. And yes, we all made the reference. Kind of fitting that Suicide Squad's death rattle is a reference to Thanos. Episode 8's opening cutscene hints that something else besides the squad is also fighting Brainiac. This will come up later. And it has Deathstroke pondering retirement because this version is all about self-improvement and meditation. Except this plot point is destined to go nowhere because this is the last expansion. Once again, all 6 incursions consist of nothing but fights with basic henchmen on a huge, potentially asset-flipped medieval map. We did get massively overpowered grenades that deal a shitload of damage in exchange for a 1/6 of your health bar, but that was the only halfway interesting or useful gear to drop for any of us in this expansion. And you only have to be at episode level 10 to get to the Brainiac fight, so we reached the final encounter within about 90 minutes. I know I'm blazing through this expansion, but seriously, they added an hour of filler on your way to the final boss fight, and that's the entire expansion. The radio chatter does mention that Green Lantern and the Flash are being prepped to join you in the final boss fight, but their inclusion just amounts to a few scripted events that don't affect anything. Brainiac recreates the maddeningly unplayable Flash boss fight where he runs around and is almost always immune to damage. I've got to be honest, I didn't land any hits on this Brainiac. For all I know, this is a survival mode while Green Lantern fights him for you off-screen. Once you kill him, a second Brainiac spawns to recreate the Green Lantern fight, except every time that you destroy enough constructs to lower his shields, a scripted event has the Flash damage him for you. Then a third Brainiac boss fight starts because, yes, they are just blitzing all of the remaining Brainiacs at once. And I know I made a lot of predictions of how this could end, but I called that too! The last Brainiac recreates the Superman boss, which is easy as piss because he periodically just sits still to let you shoot him. And that was the final boss because, yes, Rocksteady could not even make a new boss fight for the game's grand finale. They just recycle the pre-existing fights that have already been recycled about 4,000 times! But yes, the game actually does have an ending cutscene that's made of crappy motion comics because they can't afford the 3D models anymore.
We phased our butts into Brady's lair and he was steamed!
This entire thing is narrated by Harley and no one else talks because I'm pretty sure they could also only afford one member of the cast. Batman and Superman just come out of nowhere with zero explanation to take down the last Brainiac. Yes, the Arkham Batman is still alive. No, we do not get more Kevin Conroy audio. Batman explains that the Justice League we killed in the main story was actually just clones, which surprises the squad even though I think they've been told about 3 times already. Superman says that the League will atone and releases all the captives on Brainiac's ship and says they'll just fix the other worlds that we've been visiting. Yeah, just hand wave everything that happened in the story like it'll be magically undone off-screen. Hack and Toyman somehow defuse the entire team's neck bomb so everyone leaves Waller to dick around on another parallel Earth. The end. This is barely a step above, I have to go now, my planet needs me, in terms of rushed endings. But yes, that is how Kill the Justice League finally ends. All's well that ends well. Except the Arkhamverse Wonder Woman is still dead. So is the entire Bat family, and so is Lex Luthor, replaced by a multiversal doppelganger as he was. Likely millions of people still died in Metropolis alone. The DC Universe's biggest city is in ruins. The League isn't gonna have much luck fixing those 12 Elseworlds, given their barren wastelands where everyone's already dead at best. And there's no way in hell anyone's going to trust the Justice League ever again, no matter how much they atone. Also, listen to this.
And the eggheads think something's nipping at his heels.
That says the criminals, that's us, did well following his plan.
The game tries to imply that Batman was never actually captured by Brainiac and was running some big plan behind the scenes, which is probably meant to explain why Brainiac is so catastrophically weak throughout the whole game. Except Batman was still cloned for a boss fight and for infused enemies, so he had to have been captured for that. And even if we buy this explanation, he still let shitloads of people die, and he left Wonder Woman to get slaughtered by 3 League clones, and he doesn't give a shit! Also, Batman's costume changes in the middle of the crappy artwork! Also, I've seen reports that Kevin Conroy's eulogy is supposed to play again after this cutscene. It didn't for us, so either the reports are wrong, or the game bugged to screw up his eulogy again!
That's fine work right there. Well done. I'm proud of you.
To say that this ending has not gone over well is a bitch of an understatement. The whole game was pointless. They basically try to sweep the entire story under the rug as a joke that didn't matter when, again, you killed off a beloved Justice Leaguer for good, you dolts! Crap like that should have acknowledged consequences! Nobody is happy with the "we were killing clones the whole time" explanation. People who haven't been following the game just assume it's a cop-out from the bad publicity, and even knowing that it probably was their plan the entire time, that just means the game was sold on lies for cheap controversy. This explanation also opens up plot holes, like the scene where Wonder Woman uses the lasso of truth to find out how to save the League, and the Flash flat out says, "You can't!" Or how they constantly make a big deal out of the rescued League members recovering from psychological and physical damage, like the explanation was originally going to be brainwashing. Here's the thing. Rocksteady's initial plan for the expansions was that players would rescue 1 League member each in Seasons 2, 3, and 4, with this plan in place far enough ahead that they supposedly did have more Conroy dialogue ready for the expansions before he passed. They even gave Deathstroke a burning vendetta against Batman because we were supposed to rescue him in Episode 8. The plan was then to do a 5th season of expansions to properly wrap up the Brainiac story, and then, depending on where the game was, they would either end the game entirely or start a new storyline. The problem is that because they didn't know which direction the 5th expansion would take, they didn't work on it ahead of time. And then the game stalled like crap, and then the player numbers fell off a cliff, and then Warner Brothers announced a $200 million loss on the game, and then the game's support staff was cut to the bone, and then Rocksteady was hit by massive layoffs, and then the team was reassigned to a new edition of Hogwarts Legacy. It was pretty obvious months ago that a 5th expansion just wasn't going to happen. I'm certain we only got this far because they announced 4 seasons in the base game, and that was legally binding. So if this ending feels like it was hurriedly thrown together at the last minute, that's because it probably was. They had to improvise an ending on no budget, manpower, or development time because everything just went that badly. But believe it or not, it actually somehow gets worse than that utter nothing of an ending. Almost immediately after we finished the final expansion, Rocksteady had to shut the game down to perform server maintenance because the game wasn't working. And I had Martin Luther King Day off and decided to log into Kill the Justice League to gather some footage for this video, and the servers were screwed up again! I spent over 10 minutes just trying to sign in! Not even a week out from the final expansion, the servers are already dying from lack of support. Oh, and the much vaunted offline mode that Rocksteady finally added? Yeah, you have to make an entirely separate profile if you want to play the game offline. I am not kidding. In stark contrast to every other game in existence, you cannot play online and offline without constantly cycling between different game profiles. Oh, you can clone your main save file to create your offline profile, if the servers are up to do so. So when I tried to spend one of my rare vacation days playing this game I've somehow sunk 92 hours into playing, literally the only option I was given was to start the game over from scratch. I just don't get it. Either Rocksteady was scared to death of multiplayer balance, which why would anyone care? Or the devs were just so far beyond hosed that there was literally no other way for the skeleton crew to add the offline mode. Oh, and like usual, you can continue playing the new episodes to farm higher difficulties for the missions and unlock more worthless gear. There's no point. The game is over. You don't need to farm gear for shit anymore.
Yes, this is what we call stroking it.
Yep, Deathstroke just loves stroking it down there.
Why are you both covered in purple fart clouds?
He just loves
My Deathstroke's just fine.
I'm not covered in...
It must be to mark like which characters are so you can keep each other straight while we stroke it together. King Shark is doing his best to look away and ignore what we're doing. He doesn't want to see us all stroking it.
And thus ends the sordid tale of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, a game that everybody predicted would fail, and was correct. But the end is not simply a time for mourning, or celebration in this case, it is also a time for reflection. For truly, what lessons can be learned from the live service whose life was cut so tragically short by the cruel hand of audience indifference?
I think what ultimately killed Kill the Justice League is this game was made for nobody. Fans of the Arkham games didn't want it because some moron thought it was great marketing to act like we're ruining those games that you love with a straight face. Comic fans didn't want it because it turns out that nobody wants to murder childhood icons, and evil Superman is a genre that has been fully saturated for about the next decade! Suicide Squad fans didn't want it because, as fans will tell you, the squad is at their best when they're on dirty Black Ops missions, not when they're subbing in for the Justice League or being pushed as DC's answer to Guardians of the Galaxy. Single-player gamers didn't want it because the game was mostly padding and the story was weak and unfinished. Multiplayer gamers didn't want it because the multiplayer aspect was tacked on and pointless. Fans of hero shooters had nothing to work with because all the characters were boring and interchangeable. And fans of looter shooters or big ongoing MMO-style experiences didn't like it because, well, the game didn't have a point. The game was friggin' easy. You didn't need to keep leveling up or experimenting with builds until you were ready for a huge boss raid or whatever. Even Anthem and Avengers kind of got that right. Seriously, what was there to keep playing the game for? Farming high mastery levels to gloat on leaderboards? Cause yeah, free trip to literally everyone who works as a game developer. Leaderboards are hacked on a daily basis, and nobody gives a rat's furry ass. The only audience you could argue the game had was people who just generically like shooter games, and you lost all of those people with the Janker expansion, one of the most legendarily abysmal DLCs in video game history. Rocksteady's initial plan to sustain the game was to just add endless, pointless grind walls to where nobody but Miles, Schnick, and myself stuck around to see if anything got any better. This game was made entirely for Warner Brothers executives with charts that said that live services were infinite money generators. No actual people wanted this damn thing. And eat shit if you try to say that Warner Brothers didn't force Rocksteady to make a live service. On paper, that may be true, but when your bosses who control your entire future send multiple emissaries to your office with multiple presentations about how live services are the only things you should be making, paper is a flimsy thing that's used to wipe your ass! And how did that industry-wide live service gold rush work out? Suicide Squad died in under a year to about a $200 million deficit. Beloved developer Rocksteady has lost its founders and been decimated to a shell of itself, and Multiversus is so far down the crapper that Warner Brothers is just handing all their stuff to Fortnite for their future live service needs. And that's just one company! Sony lost supposed $400 million on Concord, a live service that lasted 2 weeks, and Concord was one of the lucky ones. These days, most live services are getting canceled before they even launch. Live service multiplayer The Last of Us, canceled. Twisted Metal live service, canceled. Spider-Man The Great Web live service, Cancelled. Live service God of War. Cancelled. Live service from the Days Gone developer. Cancelled before it even got a name. Live service Transformers game where I heard you can make your own custom characters. Cancelled! And that one stings because now I can't make my old original character Detonator. Or Burnout. Or Airlift, whose 3D printed model hasn't arrived yet. Oh, and Ubisoft, one of the biggest publishers in the industry who went all in on live services when they're not pumping out the same open world title for the 10,000th time? Ubisoft is rocketing down the shitter to where they're presently praying for a buyout. The video game industry is in free fall, and while live services aren't necessarily the reason why, they're the rabies that's going to get Old Yeller put down a lot sooner than later. But then again, 2 live service games did find some actual success last year, so I'm sure at least 1 or 2 publishers will still flush a studio down the toilet in chase of that sweet Fortnite money. All in all, I think the most fitting epitaph to Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League would be... How pissed do you think Warner Brothers is watching Marvel dominate a medium that chewed them up and spat them out again? But of course, I know I am not the only one to whom this game meant a great deal, and so there are others who would also like to say a few words at the passing of our valiant friend.
The game you've created has been one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever played. At no point in your rambling, incoherent mess of development were you even close to anything that could be considered a good experience. Every gamer is now dumber for having played it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Dear friends, today is the day the task force cried. And we cry not for the death of this game, that kind of goes without saying, but for the death of a dream. The dream that one day we would taste the greatness that was once Rocksteady. For it was Rocksteady who made us the happy souls we are today. How we bore witness to the surprise hit that was Arkham Asylum, the perfection that was Arkham City, and the flawed but still respectfully grand finale that was Arkham Knight. For years, we desired a taste of what Rocksteady would do next, be it a Superman game, or even just some kind of revisit to the Arkhamverse. But those dreams were dashed by the weaselly model known as the live service. The cowardly, insignificant gonif that probably got lucky with the likes of Fortnite and Apex Legends. The mound of diseased hyena filth that's not fit to lick the dirt from our spots! But I digress. The time for sorrow has passed. It's time to look to a future filled with smiles. And we'll be smiling again just as soon as we take that game there and dump it into that trash can there and dump it into that dumpster there!
Beep 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 beep.
Well, that was fun. Who's for Chinese? She is far more impressive than the last fox I sat upon.